the professional.
Blessed by Bundy, blah, blah, blah.
Started off with a bit, now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes. I'm telling you, I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up. Surfing on the web and I'm shooting at 3. I've been golden when I got my G. I'm an alien boy from a different planet, yeah. So I got my drink, I'm riding in the 1920s Model T Ford. Car era lord. Call me Levi playing on the keys, boy. And I'm about to put my gloves on. If I said it, then I meant that. Yeah, I like that one, I'm about to get that. Crash that whip for the drumsticks, whiplash. I'm about to get them all. Are you with that? In a white boat, surrounded by blue. I want one, but I got a cop too. I wanna fly high in the sky, arms out wide, trying to soar from a bird's eye view. I'm on fire, Ricky, Bobby, cracking the pavement, Whitney, Bobby. I'm a Saki bomb, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Bruce Wayne been a dog, and I keep it 101, cause I'm feeling kinda spotty. Sipping on some rock and I'm sipping on octane. The only thing around my neck started is the off with a bit. Now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes.
GM. Drop us a GM in the chat down below. Give us some love on the space up above. Over 100 registered for today. We got a special guest joining us at 9. Would love to warm up the room for Julian from Doodles. Go smash that like, the repost, the bookmark, all are appreciated. While you're up there, go ahead and hit the reminders for the rest of the week. We're not going to let up this week. It's going to be a banger lineup. So appreciate the love on the reminders. We'll get started here in about 30 seconds.
You know we worldwide, they local. I ain't never gonna stop rapping. Orlando, yeah, we working magic. We rocking Ethereum amenities. I just went and caught me a half base. Man, I got a shout out to off with a bit. Now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes. I'm telling you, I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up. Breaking them all the choose one, but they got knowledge to move, son. I'm shocking in shades with my brother in suits. Yeah, them blues is coming. Even though it's hard to pick, eeny, miny, mo, soda on the mix, no biting lips, it's time to go. Index number 1, no thumbs up, you gotta scroll. Looking at the ghost in studio, it's time to go. Had a helmet on by myself until I met a mask that wanted to have a face off. So had to bring my chainsaw, full tank of gas in the ride with my brakes off. I'm A1, but a different kind of steak sauce.
This episode is brought to you by DGen Network, the only community-based Web3 media network, bringing you the very best content in the NFT and cryptocurrency space. Please visit dgen.network and check out our other great shows. That's DGen, DGEN.network.
Welcome to the future.
Welcome to Coffee with Captain GM. Thanks so much for joining us. For joining us. I'm going to start over. GM. Welcome to Coffee with Captain. Jesus Christ, Steve. I apparently have not had enough coffee this morning. Welcome to Coffee with, I'm going to speak at like 0.7 speed instead of my normal 1.5x. Welcome to Coffee with Captain. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't already done so, please drop us a GM in the chat down below. The space, it's linked up above. Go smash that like, the repost, the bookmark. All are appreciated. It helps with the algo and discoverability. While I'm speaking slow, please pay attention to this. Steve and I are idiots. We will not give any financial advice on this show. We're still holding Bored Apes down from nearly $500,000. Please don't take us seriously. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Probably more entertainment. The only financial advice you should take from us is how to tax loss harvest. Looking at you, Riggs. Congrats on the sale. Steve, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. You reminded me of a kid reading in class a little bit there, just trying to make sure you got through it all the way, doing the best you can. But
about reading in class for a minute, that was probably one of my first areas of excelling. Like, there should be more public reading. It builds confidence. It helps people speak better. I never actually connected the dots until this very moment. When they did the around the room reading in school, there was people really did not like that at all. It's not that I lived for it, but I could read. And I think bring back reading in public. That's my takeaway this morning.
See, I think here's the problem with reading in school is reading in school was the early version of So you ever been in a corporate environment and they do fucking icebreakers when you go around the room, which are
Yes.
and when you're doing the icebreakers, everyone's like, all right, we're gonna do 2 truths and a lie. But it's a shitty 2 truths and a lie because nobody can say the stuff they would say to like their normal friends in 2 truths and a lie because you can't get dirty.
We can't make this shit up. My last meeting where I knew I was done with corporate America. I'm still under some like contractual stuff at NDA. So this is borderline. I probably shouldn't be sharing this on a recorded space, but F it, we ball. The moment I knew I was done was at the very last. We had our kickoff meeting this year, and they busted out 2 truths and a lie, and it was the cheesiest. Like I had to like fake smile, force like It was the worst game of 2 truths and a lie. It was the worst icebreaker I've ever been a part of, and that was the very moment I'm like, yep, May can't come fast enough.
Yeah, a 2 truths and a lie was it was sort of the classic everybody sits around. This is what reading in class was. When you're doing 2 truths and a lie or whatever it is, that's just one example in your in your corporate workplace. Basically what you're doing is sitting there and you're staring straight forward, not paying attention to anybody else because you're just thinking about when you are going to go. So that's kind of what reading in class is for a lot of people. Now, for me personally, I'm similar to you. I obviously feel pretty good about speaking in front of human beings. So reading in class was not a problem for me. But yeah, I mean, for me, it built confidence. For me, it was good. But for a lot of people, it's terrifying. So I don't know.
We're not going to do 2 truths and a lie on the show today. However, I am curious, what is the best icebreaker that you've ever participated in? I've got a few bangers, Steve. Steve, I like part of my life for the last couple of decades, I would lead sales trainings or management trainings, leadership trainings, fill in the blank, franchisee trainings. And while icebreakers can be cheesy, I feel as they also can be very effective if done properly. And you're in a room full of strangers, individuals that had never really interacted before. So I'm going to hold my bangers. I have some really good, what I feel anyways, I'm biased, but I feel they are actually not cheesy, but really good icebreakers. But I'm curious, before I share mine, that we can do that to warm up the chat this morning. Drop the best icebreaker that you've ever participated in the chat.
Honestly, like I haven't had a lot of particularly good icebreakers. I'm going to be honest with you. Like for me, like I think about I used to do creativity warm-ups. So like I would like lead a lot of brainstorms and we were trying to be real creative. So less of an icebreaker, but I would do things to get people's brains working different and get people to be like in a place where they're willing to kind of mess around a little bit. So like, as an example, one of my favorite ones that I used to do when I would like get people being creative is I would do this idea where I'd be like, what is cake? And everyone's like, this is so obvious. What are you talking about? What is cake? And then you start like digging in on the question and people are like, well, and they start defining it. And like you try to get groups to like define what cake is. And this sounds crazy, but when you're doing a brainstorming, you're trying to get people to start thinking creatively, it's actually quite effective to get people start saying like, because then they'll start being like, well, it's like a dessert you eat after your meal. It's like, okay, so is ice cream cake? Well, no, but there is ice cream cake. Like, well, I mean, is cookie cake or is cookie cake a cookie? And you start asking these probing questions when you're asking them to define it. And it's like the most ridiculous exercise you'll participate in. But for whatever reason, whenever I use this one with a new group of people before a brainstorm, they were all laughing. There was always one group that thought they were the first ones to do it and would bring up Cake, the musical musician, and think that they are the musician and entertainer and thought that like they were being super clever, which was for the room. And it always got a kick. And I always pretended like I was really impressed and had never heard anybody say that before. So that was my like go-to, not icebreaker, but like my go-to creative thing, which again, it sounds really silly, but once you start like asking really probing questions about it, it starts to throw people off and they have trouble sort of wrapping their heads around this concept of like, what is cake? Actually, yeah, like what is it? Because like you start to do it. Like at one point, people put a definition of cake that I could have defined. I could have defined like eating a steak too because they were so general about it. So anyway, that's like not an icebreaker, but that was like my go-to because I had to lead a lot of brainstorms for groups that hadn't do it before. And you'd be surprised after everyone's been real silly for a minute and all that. People tend to be pretty good about figuring out like how to, get out of their comfort zone and do stuff. So that's my boring one, which doesn't sound as sexy as you think until you start doing it and then you start having some fun with it. But I don't know, Cap, what are your go-to icebreakers while we're here in the cold open?
I've got two that I'll share. One takes much more prep and cleanup, and then the other is just easy to pull together on a whim, and it's never failed. The more challenging one, like the expert level icebreaker, is the egg drop challenge. This requires eggs, and you essentially a ladder, and you give teams some materials. They can be straws, it can be whatever you want for the materials, but the TLDR is each team has to build essentially an egg case, an egg protector that you drop from 10 feet, and any eggs that don't bust win. So it's a engineering task that gets people thinking critically, and really all these are intended to inspire teamwork and getting people to work together. Egg drop challenge is a fun one, albeit takes more prep and certainly a little messier than most. Needs to be outdoors. The second one, which is my go-to, that some will say it's kind of cheesy. You can't do it multiple times with the same group, certainly. But if you have a new group, the balloon tower build has never failed me. You again break up in groups. You give each team nothing but balloons, not blown up, just balloons, some freezer tape, and that's it. There's some strips of freezer tape, some balloons, and that's it. And the challenge is that it's timed. Before they start blowing balloons up, they have a little bit of time, called a couple minutes, 90 seconds, to talk about their strategy, to talk amongst the group, to form their strategy. And then you start the timer, and they've got a couple minutes to build their tower. Tallest tower wins. Pretty simple. Just can't use nothing but the tape and the balloon. So you can't like lean it up against chairs or a wall or anything like that. And it inspires creativity. Like it seems pretty straightforward, but you'd be surprised at how creative teams can get in competing against others for the balloon build challenge.
I like how you don't do icebreakers, you just do summer camp, which is great. Good for you, Cap. I'm glad that you and the people enjoy that. You are their favorite camp counselor. After that, you guys tell ghost stories around the fire, maybe do a little bit of water skiing, some horseback riding, and some camping in tents in the woods. So congratulations on that, Cap. Good to hear that you are doing quite well with your camping group. Guessing Outer Lumen came in for icebreaker. So let's go to Outer Lumen, and then we got about 45 minutes, hit news of the day, and then we got Doodles coming on. Give us a like, a retweet, a comment down below. Again, we got our friends from Doodles coming in. Let's get them a nice happy crowd coming in at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Outer Lumen GM.
Hey, GM from Windsor, which is the city across Detroit. It's kind of interesting because I never thought that one city's entire vista would be a whole other city, but here we are. I have an icebreaker thing, but there's something I learned yesterday that blew my mind and my colleagues' mind. So Detroit, as we know it, is actually a French name, which is Détroit, which means the strait. And I had no idea, like, of all the French names, that Detroit is actually a French name, and I can't unhear it or unsee it. So
I also can't think of a less American city or less French city than Detroit. Like I don't think of
Right?
like Detroit. I do not think of French, right? Like by any means.
Oh, I know. Listen, we can't. We were laughing so hard yesterday. We're like, wait, what? How is this even a thing? It is. Détroit, you're welcome. It's hilarious. Okay, icebreaker. So my favorite icebreaker is really, really simple. It's like so simple we could even try it here. But the idea is that you have however many people on the team, and the bigger the team, the harder it is to get this. But the idea is that you collectively need to count to 10 or whatever. 10's probably good. But there's no like structure to it. So you're just like, okay, together we're going to count to 10. And if two people say a number at the same time, you have to go back to the beginning. And it leaves this incredible like tension, pause, release, as people trying to make room for other people to say the number, but also like, leave enough room that you say it without someone else saying it, but you don't want to leave it too long, which is how it happens that you say the number at the same time. It's actually a lot more difficult than you think collectively to count to 10 without organizing it. So that's probably one of my favorite ones because it teaches so many different subtle things all at once. But yeah, there's so many other ones, but that one is the one that's the most memorable for how simple it sounds and how difficult it actually is to execute without a formal
Sounds
structure.
borderline like a field sobriety test.
Kind of, yeah. It's pretty hilarious. I've seen it done a lot online, which works, like on a Zoom. A lot of the working environments during the pandemic went online, and I actually ended up doing a lot of icebreaker and those kind of activities, like collage parties and all kinds of things digitally, which was really interesting because I love interactivity online, even more so than like in person icebreaker stuff. But yeah, that one stands out as something like pretty memorable. So I encourage people to like get into a room and and actually try counting together. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, we got similar to what you're saying with the boards. We got Maria in the chat talking about a Figma or sort of Miro board where you ask a question and people can put on different answers to that, which is always fun. But I have not tried the counting one. That one feels pretty legit as well. Like anything that gets you like laughing and sort of giggling and you know, like those are the things that like you're looking for in a true icebreaker, is like sort of something that gives everybody either something insightful or gives everyone the giggles. Like that's sort of what you're looking for, because then people will be like they open their mind, they open their aperture, and they're willing to contribute a little bit. Let's go to Kent here, and then we'll hit some market stuff. Give us a like, a retweet, a comment down below. Hit us with an icebreaker. We'll read a few out, as well as get ready for our special guest for the day, which should be exciting with Doodles coming up. But Kent, get in here.
Hey, GM. I was gonna do 2 truths and a lie, but I guess I can't do that now. But wrist wieners, man, you slap a wrist wiener in Miami. I just slapped wrist wieners all around, and everyone was my friend.
I have no idea what a wrist wiener is, and I'm
Me neither.
Riggs does.
Can we guess first?
No, it's a pudgy. It's a pudgy thing, right? So I made little slap bracelets that have the Gomies, the little penguin in a hot dog costume, and you slap them on your wrist and wear them. And I did it at
I was some sort of a slap bracelet. So we are.
Yeah. I mean, I've got pictures with like everybody with the wrist wiener. I'm not very good at digging out pictures.
If they don't know what a wrist wiener is by now, they don't deserve to.
You're right, Riggs. You're absolutely right.
It's not lost.
No, you got to look it up. Just look it up. Then I'm not helping out.
It's not lost on me at all. The minute you Riggs flew up here, like as soon as wrist wieners got mentioned.
Well, I almost flew up when I saw a wild Kent on stage. When I saw Kent on stage, I was like, "Oh baby!" Because first off, Kent and I have a call tomorrow morning that I'm super fucking excited for.
Me too.
But Kent coming in on this whole corporate thing, I was like, "Man, where is he going to go with this?" The moment I heard wrist wiener, fuck yeah, I am flying up there because you slapped that thing.
That's
wrist
right.
wieners were the original Hawk Tua. You slapped that thing on it, right? You know, it was incredible.
That's right. And hey, what I first came up for was on the. This is a good time on the. There's no wash sales rules in crypto still, and I think that'll probably still or may be true again this year. So I sold stuff and rebought with this dip. It just kind of resets things, and you can, if you had some other gains, you can take them against those gains. So just something that you can do right now.
This is actually a piece of alpha. Again, consult with your tax attorney.
Find you another morning show, though. You can go from wrist wieners to valid tax advice. Like I challenge anyone to find that space.
I am a generalist. I do it all, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think, one thing to, just be aware of with that is to consult your tax attorney, make sure you feel good about it, all those good things. However, to the point Kent just made, I have actually pulled this move at my accountant's advice where they're like, look, like, I remember he asked me, this is how degen my accountant is. He's like, did you buy more ApeCoin after you sold? Because I had sold a bunch of ApeCoin when it, at a point when it had run up. And then I was completely out of ApeCoin. They got back in. He's like, did you buy ApeCoin? I was like, yeah. It's like, when'd you buy it? I'm like, I'm like, are you making fun of me? Are you trying to teach me a lesson? And like, he was like, no, you bought it at like, $7 or whatever, and you bought, a decent amount of it. He's like, it's at like, $2.50 right now. And long for the halcyon days of $2.50 ApeCoin. But like, it was at like $2.50. And he was like, look, if it's at like $2.50 right now, this is your opportunity to sort of like say, you're going to make yourself a little bit more and take some off your taxes. Just swap it out. You can rebuy it again, and it will count as a loss harvest against what you do. So it's like, you're basically losing, $4 per coin, $5 per coin, and then swap it back. So a lot of people do that. I've seen it again. Like I've heard conflicting sort of, I've heard people conflicting on how they approach it. So like, again, do your own research, all that good stuff. But that's an ask a tax professional. And as we always say, it's not financial advice here, but at the moment that is correct. As I understand it, that you can tax loss harvest by just sort of like swapping. So I actually did what I did the other day. Similarly is I did two things. One, I had some Ethereum I swapped around when it went down. Two, I actually bought the dip with that with some USDC I had hanging on the side. I took about half my USDC and pushed a little bit into some Ethereum as well. So you can do that. It's a little industry trick that a lot of people use if you're up for it. So
the question is how many birds did Riggs sweep after selling his
yes. Speaking of tax loss harvesting, first we lost Mike Elf. Now we're losing Riggs. It is just a sad day in the Burb ecosystem.
Well, it depends what Burb. I had to rotate into some more Penguin assets. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, I did throw up an image in the Jumbotron of the wrist wiener if anybody was interested.
Familiar. No, I'm familiar. I've seen it. I've seen that. I've seen the wrist wiener flying around. So, very interesting icebreakers, wrist wieners and tax loss harvesting this morning. As we go through, but yeah, I know. I definitely. It's an interesting time in the market. And I guess, Cap, we talk about this from time to time when things happen, but and we see sort of a dip and a drop. I guess what I run into right now is that we are seemingly like, I don't know about you. I am normally very patient. I'm very, good at kind of like, thinking through my strategies and everything. I feel like I always, whenever we get into these downward / chop periods, I'm not as stoic as I'd like to be about it. And I find myself saying, look, long-term time horizon, we always talk about this and, continue to DCA, all those good things. And I zoom out and I'm like, we are up 100% on Bitcoin a year, 70% on ETH, so a little bit of a trailer, 700% on Solana, which is bananas when you say that out loud. Where's your head at right now, Cap, in this market in general? Because I feel like we are at a spot where we've been chopping for a little bit here for the past few weeks. I read something, and I don't know if I got to like actually look this through. I just saw it this morning that Bitcoin. I read somewhere that I think it's Bitcoin. Sort of like infrastructure companies are outpacing Bitcoin. Where's your head at in this market from a crypto perspective?
My head is send it lower selfishly, just because I've got a pretty sizable chunk that I was expecting by now. And I just got word yesterday it's not going to hit until like 4th of July. So just give me at least another week of chop, 2 weeks of chop. And then I'd like to move with a decent amount of size. But no, I think very comfy, I guess. Like I'm not fazed at all by the current chop war experience. I think very normal. And I just don't know, like we're in this holding pattern until we get a catalyst. I think the ETH ETF will be a catalyst. I do not think it's priced in. I actually said yesterday, not only is it not priced into ETH, I don't think it's priced into ETH NFTs. I think I don't know. It's so hard to say because there could be catalysts that send things the other way. But I do believe we're getting close to hitting that catalyst with ETH NFTs, and some of them are going to send, and it is going to be a violent send. There's just not enough of some of these collections when we're going to have this massive consolidation. Like, people aren't going back into 90+% of NFTs that they were in or maybe still in
And I think what we're experiencing, this isn't a shot at Moonbirds, but I think what Riggs just described, there's a lot of people in that same boat. Like, especially if we do get just things rip over the second half of the year, and people are sitting on these NFTs that they picked up sometime between 2021 and 2023 that are down bad, they're going to take those L's and rotate into assets that they want, that they'd like to be in for this next run. And I think that what Riggs just did last night, sold a Moonbird, rotated into some little pudgies. I think we're going to see that play out times several thousand. And I think the collections like Pudgies and a few others stand to win tremendously. I don't have to share the collections I'm biased on. I rock one every single day, but there's just way too much activity happening for some of these for it to not have, I think, some serious runs. I did pin up above, maybe we move the conversation into L2s. A tweet from Garga yesterday. He says, I'll just quote for those watching and don't have the visual in front of him. He says, how many new chains do you think are going to be launched in the next 6 to 12 months? Talking with people who have deal flow, sounds like between 50 to 100 that have raised serious money, which makes sense. The easiest thing to raise money for since forever has been a new chain or infra. Good news, a lot of these new chains will probably have airdrops. Bad news, hard to see how they'll be anything but massacres afterwards, since there's zero content for any of these chains. The old age playbook has been get funding for a new change, create a pot of money, DeFi farmers funnel in, attempt to use that liquidity to bootstrap other uses for the chain. You can't use that playbook to infinity, and DeFi is getting more and more hyper concentrated. When 50 chains all launch at once, trying to get variations of the same play, it's going to be the ones that prioritize or have a leg up on content that are going to win. To me, that means NFT users and dApps that NFT users actually want to use. At some point, the pendulum must swing away from infra and towards content and consumer crypto. I believe that swing is happening, Steve. Despite having all these chains coming on, I think some of them are going to win big. I think several go to zero with haste. And I unquote there. I wrap up his tweet here. What exactly does that look like? Who knows? But I think when the pendulum swings back, it will leave a lot more ghost chains in its wake. That's in the quote there. But my sentiment is pretty similar with Garga here, where I remain insanely bullish on ETH and Bitcoin, Solana. These good times to DCA from my perspective. I'm looking for, where does this consolidation happen? What chains win the biggest? And I think we are entering into the age of consumer crypto, consumer products, consumer apps, and people want to knock Blast as much. It's like it's wild to me to see how polarizing the timeline is on Blast. There's people who are insanely bullish Blast. There's people who just FUD Blast nonstop. As a user, as someone who's been farming, they have real consumer apps that I continue to use. I'm firing DFS lineups on IKB. The gold's over. I'm still playing. I'm enjoying it. It's a well-built consumer product. I think we've entered the area, or the era, of well-built consumer products that are enhanced when they're built on chain. So I'm very excited about this era, and we saw the Amber Rose, another, brace yourself, another meme coin celebrity shitcoin coming soon. I'm cautiously optimistic, Steve, that we're heading out of that era of celebrity meme coins and vaporware and into real brands, real products being supported and getting the attention, getting the liquidity that they deserve.
Do you think we're moving out of it, or do you think it's just going to exist as part of it and we're just going to see the other stuff? Like, I don't think we're moving out of it anytime soon, personally. Like, that's just my gut feeling. My gut feeling personally is, I'll answer my own question that I was asking you, which is a very rude move of me, but I'm just going to go with it. I think, in my general feeling, like, we're going to still see celebrity meme coins. I think we have not begun to fight.
Let me. I don't think they're going to end, but I don't like. Whereas for a while, it seems like that's the only thing people's been talking about. I think it just becomes just another thing that's happening in the space.
Well, yeah, and my general feeling is that it was okay. Like, how do I say this without being whatever? We'll just be disrespectful. I think it's a dumb narrative when people are like, celebrity meme coins are what's going to onboard the masses. Like, I think there are people who may play around with celebrity meme coins, right? I think that there are people who might get excited about it. And I don't think that, like, I don't have a knock on anybody who is playing in those streets. But my feeling has never been like celebrity meme coins are what's going to bring people over to crypto. My feeling in general is that, we're going to have all of these different experiments continue in the market. Some of them are going to be celebrity meme coins. We're going to see those unfolding. Some of them are going to be people doing things that obfuscate the blockchain. Some of them are going to be Blast, which is complicated to get on, but has some cool apps and will need to have, some widespread consumer usage for sure. Or if it wants to get widespread consumer usage, I think it's going to need, it's definitely going to need some easier ways, some easier rails to onboard than, going through the way they do it. But at the same time, like in general, I think we're going to continue to see these continue to see people playing around and experimenting, continue to see people who are trying new things. And some of those are going to be celebrity meme coins and people get excited about those. Again, like we've seen maybe one with a really, really solid attempt with what Iggy Azalea was doing, although I haven't seen a lot on that in a while. I haven't checked my mother bag. I'm not going to. So I think it's going to be all of the above, but I agree with Garga. I guess my question for you, Cap, before we go back to Kent is, Garga is literally there is a ape chains coming. They're doing is it Somnia? I think it's airdrop thing. So is this a weird, like, tell me why his stuff is different than the other things we're talking about, where he's talking about like these things are all potentially bad. Like, what makes what they're doing different?
What do you mean? What makes what these other chains are doing?
Well, no. Like Garga's tossing out this tweet, and Garga is actually doing you have Ape Chain coming. You have their partnership with Somnia. Are they trying to pick out the cream of the crop at Yuga Labs? Because seeing him throw out the tweet, I guess, is the thing that's a little odd because they're working with two chains in that way.
I don't think they're really. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Somnia is kind of a nothing burger for me. Right now, anyways, we'll see. Maybe it comes more of it. I think it's just, I don't know. I didn't read that far into the tweet, I guess. The very matter of fact, hey, there's 50 to 100 new chains coming. There's not many scenarios where they all survive. It's way too much fragmented liquidity. And I know Riggs has been saying this forever. Like, we've been talking Blast. We know Ape Chain's coming. We know Monad is coming. That's 3 of potentially 50 or more. Like, there's going to be, even in a bull run, it's going to lead to tremendous fractured liquidity, and a lot of them are going to die a slow death. I think what he's setting up, you talk about consumer apps in content, Ape Chain will have that. It may not attract everyone, but there is a pretty vibrant community that will be making content. There's already builders shipping consumer products. Like, that I do believe is key. I don't know if he's encouraging more builders or I don't know if there's, I'm speculating or kind of reading between the lines here. I just think that it's a little bit of a foreshadowing that they understand how critical consumer apps in content will be for new chains like Ape Chain, for instance. I think what we're seeing with ThankApe, what we're seeing with the Banana Bill, I believe a lot of that funding is going to go into not just consumer apps, but also content around said consumer apps. We didn't even mention it yesterday. We got a PackMoon partnership. We've been speculating for a while that their product, their software is white label, private labelable, able to be private labeled. They just announced the Mochaverse partnership. So now you can create content not just around PackMoon, but also Mochaverse to earn Pack. I think that is, we're still at like the top of the first inning in this era of content creators getting compensated not by views per se or ad share revenue on a social platform, rather being compensated by tokens in new chains. And I think like this isn't new. We've seen it. Again, hat tip to PackMoon. I think we've only saw the beginning of it, and it's going to become like, I think it'll be table stakes for, if we do see anywhere even remotely close to 50 new chains, if they don't have a content program built around their token, good game. Like, I don't see them capturing attention or mind share if they're not doing that. I think it's become bare minimum table stakes for crypto brands.
Yeah, and I'll say the last thing before I go to Kent, which is my general feeling on this too is that I am a, again, relatively strong believer in that the actual, like, the thing that chains want, for people who don't know, who have never played around on the, in sort of like listening to what cryptos, chains are looking for, they're looking for users. They're looking for people who are actively using the chain. That is your goal as a, as a company that is running a blockchain. That's what
and liquidity and users.
Well, liquidity and users, but like you need people using the chain. Otherwise, it's a dead chain. If you don't have people using the chain, you're putting yourself in a precarious position. So because of that, I have been a believer a long time and continue to be. The reason why I think what the gold is interesting with, as because there's no real use talking about gold and TGE around Blast at the moment because we don't know anything and we'd just be speculating at this point. But I think one of the things they did that was smart was giving their users reasons to use the chain and distribute a token based on using the chain. So I think, to me, that's what you're looking for. And then maybe you have some businesses that come out of it. Cat mentions the DFS that he's firing lineups at. I'm collecting RWAs in the colony as a collector. And so because of that, you have these like different businesses that are very real. Daily Fantasy Sports, Cap, good at it, does it DraftKings. He's a sharp there. I like collecting. I'm collecting real world assets with my kids. Son likes One Piece. Daughter likes Pokemon. I like sports cards and video games. We're getting all of those into one vault and we're getting rewarded for them. That sort of reward system gets you users on the chain. And I think, to your point, that's the thing to be keeping an eye on, because Garga's point is exactly true. If it's a ghost chain and everybody's trying for an airdrop and nobody wants to use the product, it's one thing. But if you're using a product on a chain and you have businesses being built out, that's when it gets really interesting to me. And that's what I think needs to be happening. And so if I'm a chain, I'm immediately thinking, I won't say which, but I talked to a relatively large L2 at one point, as well as like a large main chain at one point, and both of them kind of are approaching it of, how do we get in touch with the devs? How do we get in touch with the people who are actually building things? And how do we get activity on the chain? And so that's the discussion that I've had with a lot of people who are like working on these things, versus just like, hey, let's spin up a chain, or even worse, hey, let's spin up a token just because we think that people want a token and we want to get attention, so let's go token. So
I think there's a big shift too, Steve. I think it used to be like incentivizing builders, incentivizing the devs is nothing new. I think that's been going on since we got into crypto. I think the shift here is either equally, or in the case of Blast, more so incentivizing the users. And I think that is a big shift from, hey, we'll pay the devs. If we get the devs on our chain, the users will come, to are now realizing getting the devs on the chain to build out stuff isn't good enough unless you get the people there as well.
Yeah, it's sort of crypto in its finest form, where it's like align incentive structures with the actual people who are, this does lead to a world where people are like, it's funny. People are like, I click 7 buttons, I deserve $10,000. So you do get that still in some of this, but I think the thing that you get out of a lot of these things are, people who are saying, people like me who, I would have been buying stuff on the colony anyway because I like the RWA model. I like what we're doing there. And I just happen to get a little bit of a bonus extra as well. To me, that's what it is. It's a rewards program. It's, I fly Delta Airlines. I happen to get miles that are going to help me in the future, and status that's going to get me better opportunities. That's sort of the way I'm putting it. But got a lot of hands here. Got Doodles coming up in about 20 minutes, our friends at Doodles. So we're going to go Kent, Sheba, Joe in that order. Kent, get back in here. GM again.
Hey, 100%, Cap. It's retail applications is what's going to be happening this cycle, but there's so many of them. I mean, I jumped at the more Solana with this dip. I'm going to give you one example of it as well, and I don't have any real knowledge of this, but this is connecting the dots. But like BlackRock announced a few weeks ago that they're doing this, creating this new Texas stock exchange. I believe, and they're basing it in Texas. Why? Because you need cheap energy. The digitalization of everything is happening, and crypto is going to be at the base, and the retail type applications that, like with Fire Dancer and other things they're doing. So you're going to see these businesses being built out, not only where the servers are, but where there's low energy. But back to BlackRock, I think they're going to use Solana, and they're going to do what NASDAQ did in the 90s when the internet was first created. They're going to use crypto to do the stock transactions and record it, and it's going to be way better, way cheaper, way faster. And just like NASDAQ crushed and took a bunch of market share from the New York Stock Exchange. I think they're going to do that as well if they're first and NASDAQ doesn't pivot. But that type of stuff and a lot of the depends, I think that's real interesting stuff. I've been grabbing a few of those because I think that possibly, but I'm more just into staying at that base layer is just what I do, because it's just like I don't even know what's going to work. So I kind of want something that's cheaper, faster. So anyway,
for some reason I had read that, and I think it's a good point, and I think that's exactly the way that, you know, I think a lot of us look at it here, is that it's sort of like we're building the next infrastructure layer of the internet in many ways. Like you're going to have a lot of applications and things that make more sense. And that's what I try to explain to a lot of people who sometimes get put off by the blockchain, is that, you know, again, it's very similar to NFTs. When I explain to people what NFTs do, they are very impressed. When I use the term NFT, they'll say, "Oh, sounds like a big scam. You're trying to steal all my money or something," right? It's like people don't, like they'll look at it and they'll get very caught up in like, "Oh, NFTs are a big scam," or whatever. All those things that we know to be true about people who we talk to IRL about this thing, versus what it actually is sort of a base layer application software system that can work extremely well for a variety of applications of things we're already doing. And so I agree with that. For some reason, I thought I had read that the BlackRock thing was being built on, or they were looking at Ethereum layer 2s for it. But I don't know, like I might have dreamed that up.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, just the cost and then the latency and just the way Solana's been built out.
With an L2 over Solana, you think? Because like Solana, I mean, Solana has the outage risk, you know?
Yeah, but that's like, I think they've kind of proven with this meme coin that they've kind of fixed a lot of that. And then with Firedancer coming on, I'm just not sure. I mean, again,
I don't think there's any chance they build a stock exchange on Solana. I can't get transactions to go through, and I have no issues with L2 transactions to go through. Like L2s are snappy, they work, and you got to imagine BlackRock is going to be the largest shiller of ETFs in the world.
Right.
Like they're going to be promoting Ethereum and tokenizing assets on Ethereum, whether it be mainnet or most likely a new layer 2 that specifically supports this Texas blockchain or Texas stock market.
Like I said, not what I've read. It's just where I think it'll go with what happens over the next year or two in performance, you know, is what it comes down to. You're going to always go to the, you know, I hope Ether. I've got Ether bags too. I mean, you got to play, you know, the big three, but, you know, and I will throw, because I'm in the energy business. That's my main day job, but I'll throw this out there. With all these changes with AI, everything going on with all these converging technologies, you could possibly see all manufacturing move back to the United States for the United States, because you've got to be where the cheap energy is. So, for instance, an employee in the oil field right now costs us $200,000 out in the oil field, all in, and that's someone right out of high school. Well, if we can get I was thinking $40K for a bot. Now we're looking at $20K possibly in not too long. It's going to be where the cheapest energy is, which is here. It's in the United States, and it's natural gas. And so you're going to, just like you're seeing all these server banks built out close to energy, go look at the plays. And, that's another thing to look at. Again, not financial advice, but, and it never happens as quick as I think, but natural gas is still really cheap for what I think's about. It's going to take so much energy, and the energy is the basis of everything. And right now, it's natural gas that we have in abundance, and that's going to power all the digitalization that's going to happen over the next, 5-10 years. And so, how quick? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how far out the leaps on some of the natural gas companies would probably be the furthest you could go out, but it's definitely something y'all should look at. I haven't even pulled the trigger yet myself, because my day job, too much of my income's already tied to energy, so I'm not sure I can put more eggs in that basket. But love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, it's interesting. I mean, it's a I think it's something to track to see where sort of the time, energy, and money goes, especially related to this, because if it is cheaper to run things in various areas that are closer to that, it's almost like, to some degree, the high frequency trading that was going on, to make a really crude analogy, that happened where people would literally buy like an old Toys R Us that was close to the stock exchange to give that extra little bit of edge. So, setting up near the energy and kind of finding the cheaper energy will be interesting to follow, and just a different play.
Last thought on layer 2s over Solana for institutional grade applications like a stock market. Not only do I think the L2s are they just as fast, potentially faster, without the issues, without going down. The thing that why I think L2s win, Solana's not going anywhere. The meme coin casino will continue to remain online. Like, it's not going anywhere. It'll probably be the degen casino for a foreseeable future. Someone building out a stock market isn't concerned about a degen casino, but they are very attractive to money. And look at the fees that these L2s are raking in, Steve. I just dropped a post up above from yesterday from, it's not showing up yet, it should pop in a minute, from the Other Bread. And it's bananas, like 6 figures a day. These Blast, most have stopped farming gold, by the way, and they continue to generate 6 figures a day in fees. Base crushing it on fees. It is, I believe, the actual stock, the Coinbase stock, is pumping because of the success of Coinbase and the fees they're generating. Like, I don't see, you're looking at a corporation. I can't fathom them choosing to launch on a layer 1 like Solana, as opposed to building their own layer 2 where they can rake in millions of dollars in fees. It doesn't work for everyone, but someone like a stock market who is going to have users, I think it would be just, it would be a miss. It would be bypassing millions of dollars a month in fees to build somewhere else when they can build their own L2, piggyback off of the security, the stability of ETH, and rake in those fees. I think millions of dollars a month in fees is a pretty big deal, and very few people are talking about it.
Well, and precisely, like, it's to some degree like, Amazon Web Services gets used by a ton of different companies that aren't just Amazon. If a company is large enough to build a blockchain infrastructure like that, it can be used by others and made to work for them. But let's hit some more hands. I think it was Shiba next, then Joe, then Dave. Shiba GM.
Hello, GM. I just wanted to come up and say what's up. Shout out to Riggs for being a big pain in my ass, but at the same time, a really good friend over the last few months. I hope to see him come back around in the near future, if they decide to do anything right on the other side of the fence. But shout out to Kevin, Steve. I wanted to shout out Dave and the Doodles team. They've been absolutely crushing it. I think I've hit about 4 or 5 spaces over the last 2 weeks, especially after the announcement of them bridging and all the stuff that they're activating between the artists. That's all people want in this space, man, is communication. A little bit concrete of what's going on in the future and what are the plans, instead of just saying or writing plans out and be like, these are things we're going to work on in 8 months. I like activations being in place, and the way the market's going and a lot of the discussions and stuff, it looks like we're about to make some type of big move here. It's either going to be a recovery back to the all-time high, and we're going to test it again, or we're actually going to break down underneath 60 and hold underneath 60. So definitely going to be an interesting close to the week here when we get to Friday. But yeah, shout out to the Doodles team. Can't wait to hear it again here.
Excited to have them on. I think the Doodles team are one of those teams that, and we've had them on before, it's a team that, like, ever since I first saw like Julian's presentation a couple of years ago at NFT NYC, where they actually talked about, here's our business plan, this is the flywheel we're creating, these are the things we're doing. We're bringing in Pharrell, we got funding from Alexis Ohanian, and we're working on some actual music and a motion picture. And now you have, a motion picture coming out. You have an album coming out. Julian teased some songs from it that are coming out, like in a tweet. Didn't share music itself, but showed that they're working on it. He has the experience in Billboard, so really excited to kind of hear them talk a little bit about the move to Base in particular, but everything they have coming, because, I can't remember the exact number he said, but they asked how many partnerships you have left for the rest of the year, and you could tell he kind of out of nowhere said something like 4 or something out of nowhere, and the team was like, whoa, we're not ready to talk about that yet, but so they have more partnerships. They have a profitable entity in Golden Wolf. So I agree with you. Like, watching them build a business is interesting. People always say, what does that mean for holders? That's the question that people often ask. But I enjoy being part of that community, and I like seeing a real builder building the business. But Joe, go ahead and get in here. I know you popped up when we're talking blockchains. GM, sir, what brings you up? Anytime you come up, you have something to say.
Hey, happy yesterday birthday. My kid's today, so he turned a double-digit number. He's gonna talk a lot of shit today. I must smack him around. But yeah, users. Okay, it's not users that a blockchain wants; it's transactions, right? Because what's interesting about Web3 is that it's the only place right now where people and bots are the same thing. Everybody here is software. And so a user on your chain who's a bot is just as valuable to the chain as a user who's me or you. And so what these L2s used to do was pay for numbers of people, but then they quickly realized that having a bunch of fucking people doesn't mean that those people are doing anything. You can get 1 million people into your system and then give them one thing to do a week, and you get 52 million transactions a year, and that's nothing, right? I mean, I think like it's change we make fun of, like, do 3 billion, 4 billion, transactions a month, right? So like you need to have transactions, and that's what they're starting to pay for.
Can I ask a quick follow up while you're
Yeah, go
saying
ahead.
this? Is this in your is this why Solana is so excited about the meme coin meta? Because it attracts actual bots as well as people, but
Yeah.
but it seems like the founders, the co-founders and the executives of Solana are excited about meme coins as much as anybody.
Well, Solana just needs somebody to care for it, because like, I mean, go look at the tokenomics over there. Like, those guys are holding such a massive bag of money. And when it goes down to $8, they stop getting invited to all the fun billionaire parties. So like, you need to have something over there. Like, and how many NFTs can a person buy in a day? Right? Like go back to peak, and if we're not all flipping things, right? How many you put a 10K, you put another 10K, you put another 10K. Okay, but how many, like, think of an amazing, product out there from 2021. Think of apes. How many total transactions have apes made, right? And then you take into consideration how much of those transactions just occurred with a handful of assets because they were being farmed on Blur, right? So if Blur never shows up, then you can slice those transactions by half or more. Okay. So like, how many transactions can something bring to a chain is more important than how many people. And over there on Solana, like, meme coins, the thing that's interesting about Solana is that, like, it's not really that hard to build a bot over there. What's really hard to do is to consume the chain, because it's not really transparent. It's extremely opaque, and it's designed to be that way. So I would never see, like, if BlackRock was going to, and this is like off topic, if BlackRock was going to build something that needed to be audited, I don't think they would use Solana as it is, simply because it's extremely complicated to pull all that data accurately, because it's not designed. It's Solana is designed exactly to do what Solana does, which is to make the people that have the most Solana money, and to make it very hard to track that money when it needs to be tracked. And then, oh, by the way, there's an off switch that I can kind of throw, because things got a little bit quirky there, and then we reset it and off we go. But like 50, 100 L2s, like, it's not all going to be Ponzi-nomics, right? Like, if you really want to get actual things onto blockchains, you need to have a variety of blockchains, because you kind of need to have a team that you work with at the chain who can support you, because they're supposed to be the experts, and you're supposed to be bringing your industry expertise, which is generally not going to be related to blockchain. So what you ask for is, what are you building that's going to give me sustainable transactions? Because we keep handing out money to users, and then they take the money, and then they leave. And you can just go look at your MetaMask and see how many network connections you have that you don't go to anymore, because they don't give you no money and there's nothing to do. So they need transactions. And the next wave is looking for transactions. And it's not all going to be games. Like, there can only be so many games. So you have to build things that drive sustainable transactions. That's all.
Well, this is what's interesting to me too about, the thought is, like, early on, it was like, offer dev works, offer grants. And what was interesting about Blast was offering like other token sort of, again, sort of this Ponzi-nomics, idea that a lot of people, lean into. But at the same time, like, this is what's interesting to me about, a stock exchange is going to have a whole lot of transactions. And the idea, like, of having blockchains that can, like, actually bring in people who are going to do these things you're talking about, as an example, this is where we talked about, like, Polygon, like, to some degree fumbling a little bit because, Polygon had Starbucks and Nike and all these other major large companies. It's like, well, Polygon, they're going to be the chain with the biz dev for, they're going to be the chain with the biz dev they're doing for large companies. And the idea being, like, the thesis behind that was that any large company is going to be able to get the best possible advice going over to Polygon because they're going to be able to talk to people who have worked with these large companies. So they've seen the goods, the bads, the ups, the downs. And so seeing that go the other direction, I think is, a tough look for them. And, we saw Adidas recently move over to Base. We have Doodles moving over to Base. So I always thought, like, man, if these blockchains just specialize, like Arbitrum says, I'm going to do gaming, come over, we're going to do gaming, check out our game, then it's like they could give advice on, oh, we saw this with this company, so therefore do this here. So I think, like, that's an interesting part about their biz dev is chains going more specialty to things that have more on-chain transactions and be able to move people into it. Because you're exactly right. It's the transactions that matter, not the individual users. So I sort of like was one step away when I was saying what they were looking for. Chain just want people to use the chain.
Yeah, I just wanted it to be because user is this vague term that like can literally mean a person who connects and does one thing, and then you get to point at that. Like all new tech, going all the way back to Web 2, fills itself up with bots before it fills itself up with people. The difference is that when it's a botted account on a social media platform like IRL, um, your experience is going to be extremely similar to everybody else's because you post a message and then you get 10 messages immediately from these random named accounts that all say, congratulations, that is amazing. Holy cow. Wow. Let's all meet up. And it's the exact same messages over and over again, right? Because like that's what I mean. IRL raised $150 million from the Millennium Fund from SoftBank, and they had 99% bots and 1% actual users before they folded. And now they're getting sued and might go to jail. But the point is every single, Alex Ohanian becomes co-founder of Reddit because he's helping to run the bots or the fake accounts while they're trying to build in people into Reddit. Every single social media or every single new tech has to have users, and you can't just get them. So you fill that up with bots. The difference is what is the bot going to be doing, right? And so if there's product there, and it can be a variety of products for bots to be doing, then you at least can show that you have transactions. But I think a lot of these L2s that are going to pop up, their aim is not going to be to fill their chain up with individual product, but it's going to be to fill up their L3 stack with large building systems that then give them the data to sequence to send back down to the L1. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And by the way, it's funny, like you mentioned the bots thing. One of my favorite bots things going right now is obviously we still have bots going on. We still have plenty of bots on X. I was responding to something about like the Cavs trying to sign Donovan Mitchell, and I got a response saying the Cleveland Cavaliers are my favorite tackle basketball team. So that just the bots are out in full force.
Oh,
not ironically.
And the thing that's interesting, and that's funny, but the thing that's interesting is that like if I give anybody here uh, an address, a contract address, an address on chain, you can go to Etherscan, you can look at that, and unless it's completely obvious, you're not going to know if that's a bot, if that's a person, if that's a whale, you're not going to know what that address is for. That could be the 40th address for the largest whale in the system. It could be a bot. It could be, a side chain. It could be a DeFi product. You have to go line by line to figure out what that thing is doing before you can put a value on that system. And we know that Web 2 does not value the individual user. They put less than $5 on the value of an individual user. But we know in Web 3, just from Farcaster's race, that you're putting a value of $10,000 to $15,000 on an individual user in Web3. And that's partly because if you dive deep, you can pull every single thread of what that user is. And it doesn't matter if it's a bot or a person, because again, it's all software.
And the data is unrivaled. No, like we this is
pretty much. I mean, a lot of what you can get out of that data is because the thing about it is that everybody in Web3, whether you're rich or poor, you're liquid, right? And there's no other place where you can advertise directly to 1,000 people who could legitimately go buy your product right that second.
Some of us are liquid. That's Joe's big.
Well, some are liquid more than others. But like Web3 is decentralized in an incorrect manner, and it forces you to be full time here. You can't be part time because if you're part time, you're going to miss the opportunities to make you liquid next. So what I mean is like, yeah, everybody's not walking around with a wallet, with a ridiculous amount of money. But most people here, in order just to connect and do a transaction, have something in their wallet. And that's not necessarily the case if you're running an ad on Reddit at 3 a.m. That person may not want to buy your fucking product, and they're not going to go to the website to click the button. So.
Different topic, but similar. And see, I don't know if you saw, but we were having a conversation yesterday. Steve and I have an AIP idea that we have posted that with any luck, we'll go to admin review and hopefully to vote. The conversation, though, is about a sponsorship for the show. And the conversation got brought up. How does this compare to traditional like YouTube and Twitch streamers? And I was honest. I said, listen, we would probably get laughed out of YouTube or Twitch if we went to, if that was our only platform and we went to an advertiser or a sponsor and talked about it or talked about rates in Web3. But it's a massive difference. Many of the reasons that you just described. Not only are, I would say on average, your average crypto user has far more net worth and far more disposable income than the average non-crypto user. I'm talking averages, generalities, not in a vacuum, but the average user, your typical user, to Joe's point, is liquid and has disposable income that they'll spend money on.
This is true.
And the data is, we need to get the updated number. But I'm pretty sure, based on the current market and where we last looked at it, that our audience, Steve and I's collective follower base, has a net worth in public wallets on chain that's now in excess of $1 billion.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Whereas if we were YouTube streamers, we have no idea how much our audience is worth. We can guess. We could do some. I know there's software out there that could tell us how old they are and where they live, and we could make deductions from that. But to have this visibility into the quote unquote customer it's world changing for marketing executives.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting, right? It's like if you want to do YouTube or a podcast, like a sit down, let's do an interview once a week podcast. Like there is a pretty high cost to get that going, right? If you're on YouTube, you got to go set up a Streamcaster account or the other thing. Like there's a couple competitors over there. So that way you can interact with your audience and you can do graphical overlays and you can have the experience of bringing them into a lobby or a waiting room before you bring them up onto your stage. So you can make sure that they're not naked and I know a guy who that happened to. He brought a guy in without his camera on. The guy was naked and it ruined his monetization. But like I can come up here, I can say the F word, 40 times in a row and it doesn't harm your monetization from Twitter. If I do that on, my friend's football podcast, he gets bounced from monetization, and he can literally watch it in live play as YouTube just removes the money from his video. The other thing is that like he doesn't. You don't have to have a video. You don't have to have. You can have a roadcaster, but you don't have to. You can pick up your phone, start one of these things, get 1,000 people in there, and have a conversation about whatever just happened. And in YouTube, there's still that barrier to entry, right? So plus like the monetary split is like whatever you can bring into your stage is yours, right? Whatever you can bring into YouTube, YouTube gives you a share of. I mean, it's funny because people talk about like Mr. Beast and shit, right? It's like Mr. Beast works for YouTube. They give him some money, right? Amazon had to pay him $100 million to go make content for them. he works for YouTube. He gets a split of what he makes for them. So it's like the conversation around how content works and what the audience value is, it's unique. But like here, you can literally go look at somebody's wallet and tell you how much they're worth to you.
I know we have to move the conversation on. We have a special guest just joined us.
Yeah,
but
sorry about that.
No. It's great conversation. I want to tug on the string just real quick, if Steve doesn't mind. I have not quite thought about it as you just described, but the difference between a quote unquote independent content creator on other platforms as opposed to an independent content creator on X is vastly different. Steve and I don't work for anyone. I mean, we respect our sponsors, and we're going to do anything that's going to turn them off, but we don't have Daddy Elon looking over our shoulders and saying, oh, you cussed. You're not getting paid this month.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate it. I'll let you guys go. Okay. Dave needs to talk, and then Julian, but we should have this conversation at another time. And Steve, happy birthday again.
Thanks. No, I appreciate that. Turned 41 a couple days ago, so I am getting up there. But I appreciate the conversation, because I think it's relevant to how you're seeing a shifting model in the creator economy, which is really exciting, and I think they offer that. But Dave, you have been up here with your hand up basically since the beginning, so we'll let you get in for 30 seconds to a minute before we get your favorite CEO and all of Web3.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I won't be long. I just wanted to really iterate that the conversation around content on these L2s and other chains is going to be key. I think the differentiator going forward is going to be the quality of the content, because there's a lot, everyone talks about content, and all these chains are going to, that's going to make the difference. And that's why, in my opinion, and I'm just going to lead up to, I know Julian's going to be speaking soon, is I feel like they're one of the few out there that is going to blow it out of the park in terms of content. I'm sure there's others, there's Pudgy and other things that are going to come in that are going to do well as well. But content, the quality of content is going to be important. I think the other thing is going to be a chain that is able to make the onboarding super easy, just like Base does, and perhaps even create some kind of an app store like Apple does, so that it's easy for people to create content is going to be super key. So I'm really pumped. I mean, Base is one of my favorites that I feel like is going to do super well for many reasons, not just because of what they're doing from a tech perspective, but the partnerships and also the backing they have. And if you think everything that's lined up, I think they're lined up. And so for me, quality of content, ease of use, and onboarding is going to be super important. So I'm pumped to hear what Doodles and the team has to say. And Julian, I've been on a few spaces recently, and I'm going to pass it on to you guys, because I'm sure they have a lot more important things to say than I do.
Right on. They're getting ready to join us. I'll tell you what, Cool Nerd Jeff, hit us with 30 to 60 seconds, just because I know your hand's been up for a hot minute, and then we will go from there.
I got a quick 30 to 60 seconds. And I think talking back about what might set us to the next level in this world of crypto is companies like Bakkt, BAKKT, where half a decade ago, Kelly Loeffler, the CEO, left that company, which is the sister company of the NASDAQ, which is the child company of the Intercontinental Exchange. And she left there to go run an office in Georgia. And I think, this is just my speculation, but to help things get moved along and passed along. So I think moves like that are silent moves that no one's really paying attention to, that will really shoot us to the next level.
Nailed it. I looked at it. I was like, all right, let's see how, once you claimed 30 seconds, I was like, we'll see 37. Pretty good. So I appreciate that and appreciate the thought. And thanks to everyone who's contributing through this morning. But right now, getting ready to welcome on a special guest with a very big announcement last week. If you missed it, we saw our friends over at the Doodles, who have been on this show many times, move their way over to Base for at least part of the business. It was a big decision. They'd previously been on Flow. They have a lot going on this summer, which we will definitely get into, not the least of which is a motion picture coming out, something that I think to my knowledge, no Web3 brand has even come remotely close to. Excited to welcome on both Julian, the CEO, and Austin, who I don't even know what Austin's title is anymore at Doodles. I know he does strategy and biz dev, but honestly, he's sort of having the opportunity to consult with them. I just feel like Austin does a little bit of everything, which is what you see a lot of times at a startup. As we get into it, Julian, I want to start by kicking it to you as we go through this. We've been talking a little bit about content this morning. So before we get into sort of the studio and the difference between the studio, the OG collection, all the things to help our sort of audience understand that and the base move, you have a lot of thoughts on content, the way it's created in general. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether it's anything we talked about this morning or in general, your thoughts on sort of the idea of the content creation from a brand versus the community versus the team. You sort of seem to have strategies around all of these different things. So I'm curious your thoughts on sort of the content economy as it relates to Web3.
Well, first, thanks for having us, man. Always love being on the show. And yeah, I think I think content is, there's so much content out there right now. There's so much content traveling on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Snap, on X, like on all the different platforms. And there's some headlines recently, like in the last week or so, that just talk a lot about content creators that have millions of followers that make like $15,000 a year. So I think this idea of having millions of followers is a little bit confused to most people. I don't believe it means what it used to, right? Like having 1 million followers 10 years ago versus having 1 million followers today is very, very different things. And I think the concept of being able to monetize an audience that's in the low millions is skewed for a lot of people. I don't think people really understand it. I think more so than anything in Web3. People celebrate when, you know, there's a post that gets 1 million views, and like, look, it's great. It's not nothing. But it is such a far cry from being able to sustainably monetize and create a brand that's around for the long term. So I think the bar needs to get a little bit higher in Web3, and that's really where I think Doodles is going to help people kind of see the way. We and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but we have our major tentpole media coming out later this year, which is going to feature like, you know, big music videos that, if all things go well, should really trend on the platforms that they're on and should really deliver audience sizes that people just are not used to seeing in Web3. But apart from that, I think the media model is broken. And I think that relates to content creators. I think it relates to media companies. And everybody knows this issue anecdotally, right? Like the attention of our society has shifted from the box office and linear TV to social and streaming. But to get people out of their social environments and to push them into a theater or to push them into a streaming service to watch something new, the cost is just so high to do that. The network effects of our society live on social. It's really difficult to move people from one place to the next. And the majority of the way people use social media is to just market people to whatever the product is, right? Is it a movie? Is it whatever? And what you're finding is that these media companies, even the streaming companies, are taking less and less bets on new IP. So what you're finding is old IP that they know is going to work, that have really established fan bases, getting recycled over and over and over again, which is fine. It's all well and good. But for new IP, if Disney's going to create a new franchise, if Illumination's going to create a new franchise, if they're going to take a bet on a writer that has this great screenplay for a movie, they really need to be all in on that investment to greenlight that project, fund it, spend 5 years developing it, and then ultimately distributing it. So what you're just finding is, like I said, everything getting recycled. More Garfield movies, more Ghostbusters movies, more Marvel movies, more Game of Thrones shows. Like that problem is going to be exacerbated. And it's fine, right? This is really great IP, but there's not a lot of new original stories in the world at that scale. And social media has its challenges too. Yes, you can be a creator, but I caught the tail end of a discussion that you all were having just about like how hard it is to monetize social and, you know, what you get on YouTube, what you get on Instagram. I think a lot of the misconception, you know, on having a big following on Instagram and TikTok and all that is like, you don't monetize that at all. Instagram, TikTok, that's good for pushing people into other environments. But it's not good for monetization unless you're good at like selling brands access to your audience, which many influencers are, many creators are. YouTube is really the only channel that you can monetize. You know, you basically get, if you qualify, like 45% of the ad revenue. If you don't have your own sales infrastructure, you're relying on YouTube's, kind of programmatic and direct sales team, but it's still revenue. I think what you're finding in this new kind of creator economy and the idea that these platforms are not giving the kind of incentives that they used to creators, these trillion-dollar companies being built on the backs of creators and not really sharing enough of the pie with them. You're finding people going to market in very alternative ways. You're finding musicians that are putting less music on Spotify. You're finding people like Andrew Scholes buying himself out of his Netflix deal to release his content direct to consumer, making more money on selling early access to his core community to view that content than he would have on the licensing deal with Netflix. Like, these are things that weren't really being thought of 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I don't think the biggest players in the media space were ready for how fast things moved from linear television to streaming, and then streaming to social and gaming. And what I think you're going to see is a complete evolution, a complete disruption of the media business. And I believe one of the best ways to develop IP, monetize IP, create an opportunity for IP to exist for years and years and years is the way that Doodles and others are building in Web3. Tokenized ecosystems, social first, internet native, on-chain IP development. There's nothing quite like it. And I think that's going to be the future for not just independent creators, but I think a lot of media companies are going to start to get smarter about the way you develop IP. It's not just about making Game of Thrones digital pictures and trying to sell them as NFTs. It's about launching new IP through this ecosystem and having a core community build that IP with you, and ultimately scale in a much healthier way. So that's very much the way I look at this space. And I think you're going to start to see a lot of really interesting things. And I think one kind of thing to just cap off my point, good IP is the prerequisite. Just because you have an on-chain ecosystem, just because you have, a way to create content quickly, you have to be able to connect with audiences. They have to love your characters. They have to love your visuals. Like, this is the love business that we're in. It's not just the hype business. And over time, you're going to see a lot of things start to correct themselves, where the IP that is truly loved, no matter if it's on-chain or not, is going to be the IP that wins. And yeah, that's pretty much I could go on and on about this topic, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Steve, I love the take. I think I would double tap and agree with everything Julian just said. Described it incredibly well. The one thing I have to push back on, though, and challenge, and just couldn't disagree more, is the Game of Thrones hate. House of Dragon, new content, new book. Like, Steve, this almost invoked another MJ LeBron type discussion this morning.
Wait, what do you mean House of Dragon hate?
You just said you group Game of Thrones in with all the other copy pasta from Hollywood, and I couldn't disagree more. I think House of Dragon is the best series on TV right now.
My point is that it's not a new story. They were really popular books that were adapted for television. House of Dragons is a sequel to the biggest television phenomenon of all time. It's not new IP.
That's fair. Book.
Yeah. Cap gets big mad whenever anybody challenges his.
I like Game of Thrones is like, yeah, their NFTs were embarrassing. Like, I love Game of Thrones. I watch every single episode. I'm like deep in the lore too. Like, I'm a core member of the Thrones community. My point is not that Game of Thrones and Marvel and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all these massive Barbie, all these massive globally recognized IPs won't be successful on TV and the box office. My point is starting the next Game of Thrones as a TV show or as a movie is getting harder and harder and harder to do.
Yeah, and so you talk about that model and how you sort of synthesize it around, and so you hit a little bit about this new storytelling model, and you sort of like actually kind of like touched on it towards the end there, but I want to re-emphasize that. So you think in your mind, like what you're thinking right now and the way Doodles is building is your mind is we are entering sort of effectively a Netflix streaming meets video store moment, or a streaming meets you know, like even I think about like movies, to your point, the best things I'm seeing are on stream. Like that's become the new quote unquote creative movie in theaters, has been me watching a stream where they actually have some level of original television or reality television that comes across that. But you think Web3 introduces a new element that's going to change the way we tell stories almost in a participatory way, if I'm playing it back right?
100%. I think like Azuki, Doodles, Pudgy Penguins, like we are proof of that. Klanosaurs, like the people that are really focused on character development, we are proof that there are alternative ways to develop IP in a sustainable way and in a way that empowers a community. Like if you really think of the way that most IP is brought to market, you know, your fans are just fans. They're just like watching content, buying t-shirts. Like, yeah, they're like the hallmarks of the best IP are the people that create content on behalf of that IP. So like Game of Thrones, I actually think is a perfect example. Marvel's a perfect example. Like user generated content is a core pillar of those brands, right? Like what gets people from season to season, what gets people from movie to movie. It's the fan art, it's the speculation on what's going to happen, it's the theories. Like companies can't create enough content to satiate their audiences if there's real affinity built into that IP. So they build with their communities. And Marvel and Game of Thrones didn't necessarily do this intentionally. It kind of was an organic thing that happened. But Web3 businesses and the ones that do it really well in the future are going to create tools that make it easier to create content. And then they're going to reward people for participating in the ecosystem, whether that's buying merch, whether that's sharing videos, whether that's a video going viral. That's a lot of what we're planning, is how you can earn by participating in our ecosystem and creating not just like intrinsic motivations to connect with an IP, but extrinsic ones as well.
Yeah, and I think like the tools in general, it's actually a great segue into what y'all are doing. And before we talk about Ybase, I always like to give, because we always have a lot of new listeners come in, we're always picking up new people. Talk about the Doodles ecosystem a little bit, because you know, you mentioned the idea of, you know, trying to empower sort of creators or empower people who are part of that. Talk about the difference between the OG collection and the studio, and what people should expect if they're participating in the Doodles ecosystem, like the price points, the why, and the tools that you're building.
Yeah, so we have our original collection on Ethereum, which is the collectible that started it all. It will never change. It's never leaving Ethereum. It's essentially like it's the thing that started the company, the brand. And we look at them as kind of the grail collectible in the entire ecosystem, and that will never change. It also comes with, you know, a contract that gets you access to a lot of different things, that gets you a lot of benefits that other collectibles don't. You know, so it's kind of like a living, breathing membership pass that's attached to like the ultimate grail collectible. And we're going to continue to develop like what those benefits look like. We're going to continue to develop like how you're going to be able to use your doodles, you know, your original doodles and everything like that. You know, but then we're building kind of an ecosystem that scales, you know, as this kind of advent of digital collecting becomes more and more mainstream. So we have our avatars, and, you know, avatars have wearables, each wearable being their own unique NFT that you can create the one ultimate NFT with your avatar. That is like all of the kind of consumer facing scalable NFT products are going to be built on Base, and our entire collecting experience is going to live within the studio. But we look at avatars as kind of a social utility tool. We believe that the internet is really a big game. People are competing for likes, people are competing for attention, people are competing for shares. The way that they're communicating, everybody on the internet is communicating with each other, is through GIFs, it's through stickers, it's through short form videos. And we believe that an avatar that is connected to a brand that's composable, that's collectible, that you can actually do something with outside of putting into a game, meaning how do you create stickers with an avatar? How do you create short form content with your avatar? Like, what does Bitmoji look like connected to an IP that people love? and an IP that has all of your favorite artists included in it, that has a lot of your favorite brands included in it. Like, we believe avatars are going to be a core piece of digital identity on the internet, for people that are part of the Doodles community. And then, things like digital album artwork, digital movie posters, like, people like collecting digital things. And as you collect these things, if you can earn points, and those points can be redeemed for, interesting prizes and other things down the line, I think it creates kind of like a thriving ecosystem. Plus the idea that you'll be able to do like collecting games and mini games and quests, like that's all the stuff that we have planned around the studio, and all of that consumer facing experience is being built on Base. So we're fully going into ETH and EVM like that. That really is going to be our focus for the foreseeable future.
So makes sense. So you have your OG collection Doodles on ETH. That is sort of like the highest level of membership, quote unquote, for people more or less, where they're able to participate in the ecosystem. You've got the studio where people are going to be able to participate, create avatars. And what you were saying there is, like, you talked about stickers and other things. Will the studio have tools built out that allow people to create around those digital avatars they built, so they can actually personalize their experience, to your point, almost like a bit like my Bitmoji's me, but and that's funny and it's cute and it's interesting, but having a Bitmoji travel with a digital identity to me is more interesting. Is that sort of the directional way that you're moving right now?
Yeah, for avatars specifically and user generated content specifically, like that's we're developing a lot of that stuff now. What the end product looks like, this summer versus 6 months from now, it's going to really just depend on development timelines. We're doing a lot of things at once. But yeah, I mean, that's the goal. We think like if, you have this like really cool character that you can create that features like Adidas shoes and, like some crazy like burnt toast or Sammy Moore created shirt, and you can create content with that like maybe can go viral, that you can use to make a point to one of your friends. Like, we think there's avatar utility in that. And I think people think about avatars in a pretty narrow way right now. Like, they're only for in-game experiences. And it's not like we're already living in some version of the metaverse where we curate every single thing we put on social media. And we believe that the avatars can actually have utility. You're already seeing it with like Telegram stickers. You're already seeing it with things like that. So I think there's a really big market and an interesting opportunity for for core community members there.
Yeah, there's a reason why people get excited when when my mom sends me a Pudgy Penguin gift and I'm like, oh snap, that's Riggs Pudgy Penguin. Like, there is a social currency that goes along with that I think sometimes we underplay at times, as far as like that being real utility. So I find that to be interesting. I do want to hit on the Base move. So the move was sort of a huge one that we saw this announced last week. We know that Base is planning for an on-chain summer, or so we've heard from many times. We know that they're willing to put some money towards this on-chain summer. They're willing to do some promotion towards that. So why did you choose Base over any? There's so many options out there. I have to imagine, because we look for users, because we see how many people launch dudes into space, etc., that there was a lot of demand to bring people over to various chains. Why did you choose Base over any of the other options?
I'm going to let Austin answer that one. But at the end of the day, we really wanted to be kind of like free of any restrictions, and start to play in the area that we thought was best to build out the consumer crypto, the consumer NFT thesis. And we didn't want any grants or anything like that holding us back. So we actively decided not to take grants this time around and lock us up into any sort of exclusive deals. I think the original reason we were with Flow was because there wasn't really many solutions to onboarding normies in a way where the technology was really under the hood and not getting in the way of bringing users into a platform. And I think what you found with L2s off of Ethereum is that the user experience has gotten very good, and you're not actually sacrificing user onboarding in a way that's going to alienate your core community. That was like the major reason for us, is like, we didn't want people to have multiple wallets and, like all of this, all of this kind of like saturation to be a part of our product and our platform. We wanted our normie onboarding thing to not be disconnected to our entire ecosystem, and L2s being in the Ethereum ecosystem, like being with Base specifically, like in partnership with Coinbase was massive. But I'll let Austin kind of really dig into why Base and some of the things that we were looking at.
Sure. Hey everyone, good to be up here again. Yeah, I think as has been kind of our trajectory for a while, we tend to look at things on a much longer time horizon than is probably typical in NFTs, where people are worried about what is happening the next day or the next month. We very much look, what is the future likely to look like in the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years out, and where ultimately do we want to play? And we have been really interested in the Base ecosystem since they came out of testnet around July last year at FWB Fest. They literally like set up Base mainnet in the forest during FWB, and had been paying attention to their first on-chain summer experience. And I'll never forget actually when they had that DK NFT. I don't know if you guys remember, where you could either pick like Ethereum or Bitcoin. The DK, he ran up and changed the flag on the White House. How easy it was to buy that, where you didn't have to have a wallet. They would create one for you. You could pay with Apple Pay and you'd have an NFT in a couple clicks. And our legal counsel at the time had hit me on the side of like, hey, I haven't really participated much in NFTs, but I was able to do this with very little experience very quickly. And that was kind of like a light bulb moment of like, okay, the user experience has dramatically accelerated on L2 since the last time this type of conversation was happening of where to have our scaling ecosystem. And so we've been paying attention, wanting to see how all of the various ecosystems were developing, how the users were attracting to them, what the incentives look like in each ecosystem, which of those incentive ecosystems we felt was the strongest and would be the longest lasting, and would also be the most call it cycle resistant, whether markets are up or down. Is it something that we anticipated people would still want to use and find value in? So we had conversations with all the major L2s and alternative L1s. As Julian mentioned, we were pretty diligent in not taking grant money this time around, and being very focused on what was going to be the best product experience, and what was also going to give us the most amount of options in the future as well. And then just really having an incredible experience with the Base team, getting to know them, and seeing how they really stand up for creators of all sizes. It was really telling to me that a lot of people know Jesse, who kind of leads. He's more or less like the founder of Base, and that he really leads from the front, and he can tell you all of the emerging builders on Base. They do a builders call every Friday. I consistently see him actually shout out small creators left and right. And so that was really important. And that kind of flows through to his entire team, how they really focus on really being on the ground floor with their creators and knowing what it is that they want. And we just saw them building the home for consumer crypto. And we thought about our ambitions of reaching both scale, but also being able to build very crypto native products. There really wasn't a close second for that. So really, really excited with this move. I think the reception to it has shown that the community is also very excited and sees the vision behind it. And yeah, we've got a lot coming together. So can't wait for you all to see.
So you mentioned a lot coming together, and I think it's actually a pretty good transition into everything Doodles has coming this summer. So it seems, the Base move was just seemingly that's sort of kick off the summer. We got the Base move coming in, right? That's sort of the kickoff of the summer. But I know, Julian mentioned the property coming out this summer as far as, this is sort of the staple, the tentpole sort of event. And I'm curious, and, I'll go to Julian or Austin, you both, you can answer this. You've been building up this big groundswell against this motion picture. You've got a bunch of, I won't steal your thunder. I'll let the sort of the you know, you talk about the actors and everybody else who's in it and other musicians, but talk about what this is and why this is a big deal, because I think you're the first Web3 brand to really start to exit Web3 in this way. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the movie coming out this summer.
Yeah, it's huge production. It's called Dullsville in the Doodleverse. It's our first animation special. It is co-produced with Pharrell. Pharrell's also producing the original soundtrack. The soundtrack is going to have 3 songs with corresponding animated music videos. You know, all of this content is going to be kind of setting the stage for the story around Doodles and the world that we've built and continue to build. We have a few like major artists that are going to be voicing characters in the film and also performing on the soundtrack. So who we've announced so far is Lil Yachty, Lil Wayne, Coi Leray. I think that's it. It's going to be a really.
If you want to announce anyone else, but we won't stop you. We'll cut this part. Just go. Just keep rolling. Just keep rolling.
We're almost done with the collaborator announcements. But we're going to be bringing it to market with a few really big brand partnerships that are going to help us kind of like extend the messaging and get it in front of other people and create some really cool experiences around around the film. We're premiering it in Toronto in early September. And we are going to be distributing it in a pretty unique way that plays a lot into, what we were discussing a little bit earlier. I believe that these platforms still have a major role to play in the proliferation of content if it's done in the right context, which we plan to exploit a little bit here. But this is a really big moment for us. Like, we acquired Golden Wolf. We got our Golden Wolf, and for those that aren't familiar, they're an Emmy-nominated animation studio that does short-form video consulting and animation and advertising production for some of the biggest companies and brands in the world, in Netflix, Nike, Epic Games, etc. And when we acquired them, the goal was to create internet-native short-form content that would keep us top of mind for our core fans on social media. We've done that. We've delivered over 175 million views on YouTube, which is, for those that aren't aware, 25 times more than the next in Web3. And we've been able to do that in basically 2 short months when we just started publishing our shorts to YouTube. So we're seeing a lot of short form video success, and now to really create that affinity that I've been talking about, that brand and character love that I've been talking about, these music videos, this animation special, this is really kind of like our stake in the sand. And for those that aren't aware, like the kind of effort it takes to put something like this together, the amount of agreements you need to put in place, like the amount of conversations you need to have with all your different collaborators, like Web3 has never seen a project like this, regardless of what anybody says. This is the biggest media project that Web3's ever seen. It's not a big media project for Web3. It's a big media project, period. Like, this is going to make real waves in the world, and we're so excited to share it with everybody. It's been a labor of love for sure.
Yeah, and it's quite an experience, like with your background at Billboard and the people you're bringing in, to see all of the different sort of the music, the movie, everything sort of coming together. And I'm curious, like, how do you go about, like, from your experience, bringing in some of these, like, so just to give some context, celebrities aren't exactly gung-ho on NFTs after we had sort of a rise and sort of a fall that happened with the pricing. I don't think that changed the builders, but there was the pricing. So how do you go about getting these large names? I mean, you're not talking about like some small up-and-comers. You're talking about people who are playing Coachella. You're talking about Lil Wayne, who I grew up with, Lil Yachty, who is, one of the largest artists in the world. You're talking about Pharrell, who's a megastar. How do you pull them in and convince them to be tied to this IP and tied to something that started in Web3?
Yeah, we're not talking about all these musicians and celebrities that are launching meme coins right now. No, It starts with the art. I mean, everybody in this spaces right now, everybody I talk to, everybody that stumbles upon it on social media, Burnt Toast art is special. It's different. He's a once in a generation creator, and his art is evolving. And now that we have a team of artists in Golden Wolf that are supporting that vision, like, that is ultimately the thing that gets people interested, right? Like, there's obviously a bit of a cheat code with me and Pharrell making these introductions because we've had success in our careers. And when we bring somebody something, they take it seriously, which, you know, is hard. Like, just getting in the door with these people for you know, with these artists and with these creators, for people that don't have experience with them, it's not easy to do. And the artists that we're working with don't do things just to do things. They don't do things for a check. They only do things that they're inspired by. And if Pharrell is co-signing something, it's you know, it's something that piques people's interest. So we get in there, we show them the content, we tell them a little bit more about the company. And you know, you have to talk to management, you have to talk to the artists themselves, and they you know, and they fall in love with the art, and they want to be a part. Like, there's also something that Thread guy says. He's you know, I know he's like half joking, but not. All celebrities want to be crypto influencers. It kind of plays off of that thing where all athletes want to be musicians and all musicians want to be athletes. A lot of these artists around this age range that are kind of popular right now grew up watching cartoons just like the rest of us. They love cartoons. They watch Cartoon Network, they watch Nickelodeon, and the ability for them to be part of a new cartoon franchise, better yet, be in the cartoon franchise, like as a character, voicing characters. Like, you saw the Lil Yachty graphic, like Lil Yachty was a doodle. He's also voicing a fictional character. Like, that's kind of what we mean when we say bridging the gap between digital and physical and blending fantasy and reality. Like, Doodle's IP is so unique in that sense. It's kind of like Simpsons in the way where we can like bring brands and creators and celebrities and musicians into the IP in a really organic way. And you know, people just see it. So I think they believe in what we're building. They believe in how innovative it is. And but the first thing, straight up, is just the content. It's the art. It's the brand.
It all starts with the layer of the brand. And I think that's what you talk to. I mean, you said that at the beginning. It starts with actually having a product and a brand that people want to participate in, which I think makes sense. Happy in the chat with a question for Julian and Austin. What percentage of target creators have actually declined the invitation to participate in the big campaign going up? So did you reach out to people who maybe weren't involved and weren't able to get there? Or was it more of a, you know, you've reached out to specific ones and had those conversations?
There was nobody that didn't end up being a part of this that we reached out to that wasn't interested in it. Like, if anything, we'll probably do things with those people later on down the road. It was really all about timing for certain people. Like, maybe they're part of like an animation thing that, you know, that kind of conflicted with this. Maybe they're on a world tour and couldn't get in the studio to record with us. Like, you know, there were a couple artists that we really wanted for this initial project that we didn't end up getting, but we're really, really happy with the lineup for this initial one. And then, you know, for our future projects, you know, we're already having discussions with a lot of the people that couldn't be a part of the first one. So we didn't really run in to anybody that was like not interested in being a part of this. Like, that was kind of like a resounding, you know, like it was always met with positivity. What I will say is that people question the NFT side of things, but when you take the time to educate people, because there is still like just so much misinformation about, and it's because I say this a lot, like the narratives that trended in 2021 and 2022 around NFTs were the wrong narratives to create sustainable interest in this space. And people are still extremely skeptical. The music industry, celebrity, like, yes, you're going to get the grifters that are here right now trying to show you their coins, but like the people want to be associated with like really quality projects, And that's not what people think of NFTs. So brands like Doodles, educating them that, no, this is the future of entertainment companies and this is how, we think we're doing a really big service to the entire industry, because the most influential people in the world are now going to be onboarded into this thing. And it's not going to be for the same reasons that they were here in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, and shout out Happy, by the way, great dude, content creator, one of the most recognizable dudes in the timeline. So appreciate you showing up this
Legend in the
morning.
Doodles community, Happy.
Absolute legend. Love Happy style. I actually want to go to like Austin for a question regarding the product, because I feel like when I've seen, having the opportunity to have consulted with the team, work with the team, and seeing how they all interact, I got to see all the different things you sort of have your hands in on the ground level at sort of an executional level. And I look at this product you're talking about. I look at how you're talking about this model, and this might be a wacky question, but Austin, I'm curious, would you ever see this being, if it's successful and when it's successful, as you build it out, that you would even white label a product like this for people, or have an opportunity for people to use the same product you built out? Or is it, nope, we're building our own proprietary stuff, all doodles all day? Or can it be something that maybe large brands or other media companies will want to exercise?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one where I think for any business, the objective is always to solve problems for yourself first, and then see what the total addressable market can be, and how that could be applicable to other people that likely have the same problem. So with that in mind, like, yes, absolutely. We think that the primitive that we're building, particularly in the studio, when we think about like the composable building blocks we talk about often, I think about it almost in the sense of like AWS, where each of the individual primitives, like for AWS, for example, S3, is something that you can use on its own. And then you kind of get like a exponential effect when you add them all together. We think of the studio in the same way. So for certain partners, potentially in the future, maybe they are really only interested in like our questing and loyalty. Maybe other ones care much more about like how we think about digital identity and avatars. Maybe someone wants all of them together. I think there's really power in being able to kind of like plug and play depending on what your use case is. The model may change. I don't think we anticipate powering all creators at the jump. It's very much like a crawl, walk, run in terms of how other IPs can participate. But those are active discussions. I think are a lot of credit to our product engineering and design folks with Greenie, Squinch, and French Loaf, who always from the very beginning have thought in the back of our mind of like, okay, we build this for ourselves, but we always keep an eye on like how other people could potentially build with it as well. So yeah, that is very much like at the forefront of our thinking.
Yeah, and actually, like along those lines, just to tug on that thread a little bit. By the way, that engineering team full of chads, they're base as fuck. With what you're building in there, talk about like, are there learnings? Because obviously, this has been a process with figuring everything out, like anything else in Web3, because you don't know. Like when you get on the boat and go to sail across the ocean, you don't know where you're going necessarily. You're waiting until you hit land. So sometimes innovators run into bumps in the roads. What are some learnings you've had, particularly, I would say, with the studio, which is sort of the news of the day with that moving over to base and everything going there? Are there learnings you had along the way of things that you're going to do differently moving forward, or different consumer behavior? Just curious about that.
I mean, I found it really interesting and validating our thesis around transmedia when we did some like basically experiments within the studio to do unlockable content based on the NFTs that were in your wallet or if you were in space. And the level of engagement that we saw with the core community when some new transmedia content was released, and then the amount of UGC that we would see from that as people started to speculate or wanted to disseminate it, and really almost as like a social proof that they got it first. So doubling down on that for sure, and making like different types of media in different environments, and being able to leverage experiments that we can use within the studio, and then that people care about their sense of expression. When wearables came out back in like a year and a half ago at this point, it was very much a like hypothesis that people would want to express themselves online, and they would want to do so in these characters. And I think since then, as we've added more features, as we've added backgrounds, as we've added like additional like type of wearables that come with partnerships, often the digital aspects are much more highly coveted than even their physical counterparts. So the ability to flex your digital G-Shock, and that even being like a result then of being able to sell it for more than the physical counterpart, or when we do like special edition backgrounds that you can only get if you buy something, if you participate in something, and seeing those all over the timeline, I think is really valuable and further validates the thesis that people do care, and people do want to express themselves in this world. So those have been some key learnings that we definitely are going to double down on as we continue to grow the product.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I love hearing about like the learnings along the way as you continue to move on to various different aspects of this, because it is going to be a learning possibility. And I'm sure the way consumers interact with the studio is going to be different in many ways than you even expect, even with the best laid plans, and how you adjust is what matters. And obviously a team, I think a lot of us trust to adjust. Joey Valles, you've been waiting to get in here for a hot minute. So go ahead and get in here with a question for Julian or Austin, any direction you want to go.
Hey guys, thanks for coming up and hanging out. I still have a goal of owning a doodle one day. I just need a little bit more liquid. But I feel like every time you come up here though, the next day they pump and then it prices me out even more. So just stop talking on Spaces so the price falls. So my question is more around like your audience. So obviously with the partnership with Camp, it was clear initially that the audience would probably be the younger generation, right? Because Camp is obviously geared towards younger people. And younger, I mean like adolescents probably, but now with the onboarding of, all these rappers and the like, I guess my question is, what is that audience? Is it from 8 years old to 50 years old? Like, what is your target audience? And if it is that big, how do you manage being able to target such a large age range with what your content is and what you're building?
Yeah, I think that's a great and fair question. Camp, the experience, I think, because you see a lot of content of kids, like people misunderstand what Camp is. Camp is really like a 4-quadrant solution for studios. So there's like a couple outliers there. Like I think Paw Patrol is pretty young, but everything else that's there is family-friendly entertainment. So you see Trolls there, you see the Encanto show there, and maybe Mickey Mouse, I guess, is a little young. But like the reason why we wanted to go for Camp was to target families, like younger families that have kids at a young age, to create like a pretty cool experience and kind of test that market. But we look at Doodles as a 4-quadrant kind of IP, and 4-quadrant basically means that there's just a lot of different demographics that you can target. Think like when you think of our content that's going to hit this summer, think like Adventure Time, think Into the Spider-Verse, think PG-13, that's safe for families to enjoy together, right? Like the writing and the concepts are not necessarily for children, but it's safe to share with your children. It's kind of what most Pixar movies are like. It's kind of what most Illumination movies are like. I think we have a little bit more edge and a little bit more grit than that. But I think like when people want that kind of like narrow comp, just think of like Metro Boomin presents the Spider-Verse soundtrack and what the story was in Into the Spider-Verse. Like that's kind of more like the teen young adult focus, but there's going to be older demographics that are very interested in it, and just by nature of the fact that it's a cartoon, kids will be into it too. But it's definitely not like CoComelon type content.
Okay, cool. And then last question, because I'm sure Steve has more too. The feature film, right? So like in today's world, like the idea of short form content and like we're seeing it with Star Wars right now. Granted, Acolyte is not its best production, but they moved away from long film and went to like series where the shows are about 25 minutes, and we're seeing a lot of other people do that too, which is really effective for like streaming services and things like that. Did you guys ever consider, instead of doing like a feature length film, saying like, hey, let's go the route of 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute, and do like a series, so you could actually build like a whole, like we could actually fall in love with the universe, and because you're waiting for the next episode, and you can story tell more than what you can in maybe like a 90-minute movie.
So to be clear, it's not a 90-minute movie. It's not a feature-length film. It's a short film. It's a 20-minute film. And
oh well, look, see, I'm an idiot.
No, you're not. No, you're not. A lot of people have been asking that question. But I think like the way people tend to think of like storytelling right now is a little narrow, and narrow in the sense that like, if you don't have a movie or a series, like how could you develop all the lore you need? But if you really think of like internet native IP, people are just scrolling shorts all day. People are like laughing and sharing that content with their friends. People's attention spans are really, really short. And the idea that like a series, like this model is actually being challenged really heavily right now, where they're pulling funding from a lot of series. It's very, very hard for a series to get from one season to the next. And what you're finding is that there's actually more deal flow around features in Hollywood right now, movies that are ultimately events. And that could be an Apple TV movie. It could be a movie that goes to the box office. So Pharrell, if you look at his Lego movie, he's not going with a docuseries on Netflix. Like, he's doing a documentary about his life that's done through the creative format of Lego animation that's going to theaters. So I think you're going to see the deal dynamic start to, like, or the content dynamic start to materialize in kind of like different ways from what you've seen in the last 5 to 6 years. And I think from that is like, what if we did a series? So we just like, so what, Doodles is a TV show now, or Doodles is just a movie brand now? No, we're an internet native creator. We're in your life every single day. The movie, whether it's a short movie or a long movie, the series, whether it's 1 episode or 12, that's an event. That's a big tentpole opportunity for us, but that doesn't define us. And I think that is the thing that a lot of the creators of the world and studios of the world, have had wrong. Like, The Simpsons is a TV show. Rugrats is a TV show. They're not brands. They're not characters that are in your lives every day, because that was the medium of that time. The medium of this time is social media. And if you can build enough affinity to warrant a box office run or to warrant a massive thing on Netflix or Amazon, that's incredible. But if you're building your entire business around a movie or a series, you're not going to have a business for much longer. And that's kind of the challenges that are some of the challenges that are facing the media industry today, and why we think this concept of like internet native on-chain IP is such a great way to develop the media brands of the future. And by the way, like, we obviously have ambitions to be on streaming platforms like that, in movie theaters like that, but it just has to be done the right way and in a way that doesn't give our IP to these platforms. Like, we need to control the upside, we need to control the creative, et cetera, et cetera.
Julian, I saw a post the other day about, I believe it was Inside Out 2. You took your kids and just the movie theater experience. Is there anything that you can share? And this is just more like, maybe it's off in the future. I feel that movies, like the movie theater experience, is primed for disruption, but I don't know how. I'm so bullish on experiential retail, and that's one. I have not been able to connect those dots. Like, do you have any just a vision of like what's next for movie theaters? How can they turn the movie going experience into more of an actual experience?
Well, I don't know that there's anything wrong with the experience. There's nothing more magical than showing up to a movie theater as a family, getting candy, getting popcorn, like getting excited to see all the posters that are on the wall, playing a couple of the arcade games that are there, and then going into a movie together, watching it, laughing, having a great time, lights go down, trailers, like that nostalgic feeling, but also just like that feeling that you're doing something together. It's like a community event. Like, I don't think that experience really needs to be disrupted. I think that's an incredible experience. And I think you're finding theaters trying to get like, like IMAX is like amplified, and then there's these 4DX theaters and iPic. So like they are creating new kind of hospitality experiences at the movies. And then there's shit that's just as charming as like going to like a tiny little theater in New England that like has been around since the 1800s or whatever. And that has its own kind of like magic built into it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the theater going experience. I think it used to take a lot less to get people to go to the theater. And now people really need to want to go to spend the money that they need to spend. I mean, dude, we bought like 2 things of popcorn, a couple things of candy, a couple of drinks. It was $60 plus the price of the tickets. So it's not an inexpensive endeavor anymore for a family. There's a lot of competition for attention. So my thesis on the movies is just that it's not a network effect anymore. People aren't just going to the theater because it's Friday night, or less people are doing that. And more people would just rather experience their entertainment on screen at home, or they just rather browse social media and YouTube. But when the new Star Wars movie comes out, when the new Marvel movie comes out, when the new Inside Out 2 comes out, when the new Despicable Me 4 comes out, I think next week or the week after, like the Mario movie, all of these things, like that's an experience. It's an event, but you need to have IP that can pull people into the theater. So I don't think the experience itself is the issue. I think it just might condense a little bit, and maybe there will be less movie theaters in the world. Maybe like the runtime of when movies are at the theater versus on streaming will get shorter, but the movies aren't going to go away. I just think like the business around the movies needs to evolve a little bit more in order to support. I just don't think the movies actually support new IP anymore. It's just too expensive it takes too much time to develop. It's too expensive to develop, and it's too big of a bet for studios and third-party financing companies to think that like I'm kind of talking in circles now, but you get my point.
No, I think this hits. I was going to say, Cap, because it's funny, like the exact example you just gave is kind of perfect and very like apropos for me at the moment, because my kids never want to go to the movies. They play games, we play outside, we do all these different things. You have to compete for attention now because, like my kids always remind me how old I am when I say stuff like this, but when I was growing up, there was one television in the middle of my family room. My dad and mom dominated it. We watched what they watched. There was 4 channels, and you had certain options of when, if there's live sports, it was over. Well, now we're in this circumstance where, Key, your hot mic, I'm going to mute you. Now we're in this circumstance where it's like my kids don't demand that. However, Inside Out 2, my son turned to me and goes, "Can we go to the theaters and see that?" So it's the quality that drives it, not necessarily the fact that the model doesn't work, but like what they're doing with the model, I think that matters. So I think it's a banger point. I guess like as a follow-up to that and a little bit of a slight diversion, but I'm curious about this, is that, Joey mentioned camp. And one of the things that I've noticed about Doodles is that, a lot of major brand partnerships. And you kind of slipped on one of the dude sessions and they said, I believe the answer was, how many partnerships do you have going on for the rest of the year? And there's this long silence. Someone's getting ready to say we can't talk about it. And I think you said 4, I believe was the number you heard, which caught everyone off guard. You could kind of tell, and they were excited about it. But that said, you talk about some of the past partnerships and what you look for in that, because it seems like you have this model of, you got the studio, you're trying to have this, always on storytelling. You've got the movie coming out with a bunch of major actors, the shorts coming out with a bunch of major actors. You've got music coming out. You've got Golden Wolf creating, persistent videos on social and a growing YouTube channel. But then you've got the partnerships end. What is the strategy there that continue to go down that well? And talk about some of the results of the past ones, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. I mean, partnerships, big brand partnerships that are executed well are tentpole moments in their own right? Like if you think about the way Barbie, the movie, went to market a couple summers ago, It was a massive marketing execution where a lot of different brand partners did activations around the film, and it made the event of the Barbie movie even bigger. So this summer, look at as one massive event that is all tied together. And the brand partners that we're going to be working with are going to extend that event. They're going to amplify that event, and they're going to be adding experiences to this event. This summer is like a major party for Doodles holders, where we're going to be welcoming a lot of new people into the community. And there's going to be so many different ways to have fun, like on the internet, which is really what we all kind of do, and at points in real life. So brand partnerships in our mind, whether they're tied to a big moment like this or just kind of a one-off, they're another event to galvanize the community. They're another event to reach new people. They're another moment to create like different sorts of engagement loops. And I really believe in the power of brand partnerships to build brands. So, or the power of partnering to build brands. So this summer, you're going to see 3 partnerships from us, and they're all unique. There's going to be more information about what they are pretty soon, and they're all going to be fun. They're all going to have like collectible moments tied to them. They're all going to have physical product moments tied to them, in real life moments tied to them. It's going to be incredible. Like the way we do these things is very integrated. Like I'm a business development marketing person, and I really believe building businesses with partners and building like new ways to reach people is, you should always explore doing that as a company that's trying to really find product market or brand or IP fit. And we've learned a lot, from Crocs. We've learned a lot from our first Adidas partnership. We've learned a lot from G-Shock. And what's fascinating about these partnerships is brands are blown away when they partner with us. Like Crocs couldn't believe the kind of engagement we were able to create. G-Shock couldn't believe the kind of engagement we were able to create. And it all stems from the fact that we're an internet native, online community started IP. So when we create content with G-Shock and we kind of debut a new character in the Alien, and some of the people in the community are actually helping us get that content out there, all of a sudden millions of people are watching that content, thousands of people are sharing that content, pushing people into the collectible experience, which was ultimately purchasing the G-Shock watch that came with a digital collectible. Some people that had the Alien trait actually got that entire collection for free. We also did a vinyl and corresponding soft goods merchandise tied to it. And then there was a raffle for other people in the community to actually win it. But basically we created content for social. We pushed people into the studio platform. People bought it. Some people that bought the $185 watch actually got the really rare digital version. A couple people sold them for like $400, $700 or something like that. But some people just decided to keep what they got and used it for kind of social utility and social currency. And we did a specific background, a special background in the studio so people could export their content. And we just saw like an outpouring of user generated content tied to that moment. And for that week, it was an event. The Doodles community had so much to talk about. It was a great time. And all of that user generated content actually helps us reach new people. The G-Shock community, many of those people then became part of the Doodles community. We sold a lot of those watches to people that were not Doodles holders. So it's this new flywheel of tentpole content into platform, into collecting experience, and then incentivizing user-generated content. Brands can't really believe that flywheel, and it's why they're wanting to partner with us in such a material way. So like we turn away partnerships at this point, and again, it positions them as innovative, like it looks good to their marketing teams, et cetera. But yeah, I partnerships for us are not going to slow down. They're just going to get smarter, more fun, better in kind of all aspects.
Yeah, and Austin, I'd love you to build on that, as you're one of the hardest working people I know in Web3. I feel like you're always on the phone with somebody. Like, I feel like anytime I talk to you, you're like, yeah, I was just talking to that person. Like constantly you're at it, right? And so because of that, like I'm sure you talk to a lot of potential partners. what is something that makes you turn, Austin, from your perspective, what makes you turn down a partner? What makes a partner exciting for you? I'm so curious, like what you look for when you're taking these calls with these various people.
Oh man. I think it's someone that understands that NFTs are a new distribution format, not a monetization strategy. I think often when you get to some of these like bigger brand partners, the first words out of their mouth sometimes will be like, yeah, we see this as like a great new revenue driver. Or we have like X revenue goal. And I can understand that for these really big companies. Ultimately, they need to be able to justify the investment of time, energy, and resources, particularly like where we are in the cycle, right? Where operational efficiency is like paramount to operating a lot of these companies. But I think a lot of people often don't actually understand the value prop of crypto, and sometimes can just see the dollar sign. So that's really what I look to suss out pretty quickly. Obviously, that's not an issue anytime we're doing like native crypto partnerships, but I think there is often a lot of education that takes place of what it actually looks like to have a bidirectional relationship with a community, and to co-create with a community, and what it looks like to have full attribution because of the relationship you'll have with those wallets, versus how you would traditionally market a release in Web 2. So that's definitely like top of the list that we make sure that we suss out for.
Makes sense. No, it's great. Let's go. I think we have a couple of questions. I know we're a little over past 10 o'clock hour, but we got some great audience members. I want to go to our questions if we can. So Machiavelli, go ahead and get in here with a question you have for Julian or Austin and Key. We'll get to you as well.
Yo, thank you, Cap. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Cap. Thanks for having me up. Good morning, everybody. Guys, I've loved this conversation. It's something that I like the method in which y'all built IP and the way that I see the future of IP. That's why I'm participating in Web3. It's heavily the way that I'm doing. But we actually reached out to the Golden Wolf Studios to try to get our first animation done. When we got our quote, we realized that we were going to have to pull back and bootstrap ourselves and like really go out there and start to build this IP different way. What kind of advice could you offer small teams out in the space who are trying to create the lore and the storyline first and dive into the same methodologies that the brands before us have come through or utilized to, become what now Doodles is going to be a legacy brand, if anything, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, good question. And I think Golden Wolf is expensive to work with. Just given kind of our partners and and like what the rate card is ultimately for our time. But what I would say, as advice is like, you might not need a studio like Golden Wolf to create all of your content to get started. Like, AI is really going to cut a lot of time and expense out of the animation and content creation pipeline. And there are already tools out there where you can generate stories, where you can generate images, where you can start to cut time out of like the video creation process. I'm aware of companies that the quality isn't quite as good as what they want it to be, but because they're optimizing for price, they're cutting like 50, 60, 70% of the cost of their content creation pipeline. So I would encourage you to look into what AI tools are out there for you as a creator. There's a ton, like we use a bunch internally as well. But there are also just like cheaper alternatives than Golden Wolf as far as like animation, but it is traditionally expensive to do that. So I would look at content tooling for getting started and not worry if it's meeting the exact quality that you want. Like, so much of this stuff is really just about getting started and building upon that.
Okay. Thank you very much for that answer. We actually went out and got animators for our wheelhouse to continue just to put out content, and that's been one of our main focuses, being the gifts being created, and since our storyline is created and stuff like that, like we're very heavily focused on the way that our content looks, because it's very important that our first appeal to any audience is like, oh wow, that looks sharp, or that looks fantastic, that looks like it belongs on a screen. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So thank you very much for that answer.
Yeah, man. No doubt. Then and good luck. Like, it's a grind out there. I understand that.
Yeah, no, great answer, and it is true. It's funny. The AI is so good. Although one thing AI needs to fix is when you announced Lil Yachty, I was trying to get the Lil Yachty robot on Lil Yachty walkout dance that was going around for a while, and I wasn't able to do it. So AI's got a it hasn't quite made it there yet. It's working on it, but that felt like the low hanging fruit.
Hard to replicate the Doodle style, man. Maybe that's a moat.
I didn't think about that. It's a mode against AI. How do you protect yourself against AI? One eye off of the character. Key, go ahead and get in here.
Hey guys, GM. It's been a long time, Captain Steve. Thank you. Question for Julian. So from the product perspective, so Julian, is the avatar going to be a new transition from the OG collection? That's the first question. And the second question is, in the whole ecosystem on base, how do you see Smart Wallet benefiting the new ecosystem that you're building?
Sure. So yeah, the avatars are already a different product than the original collection. The avatars live entirely on base, whereas the original collection lives entirely on ETH L1. And they're going to have different use cases and different utility. But at the end of the day, the avatar is like a more expressive, composable part of your digital identity. It's, a customizable character, that you can customize based on whatever the moment is in the Doodles community, whether that's a big brand partnership or a film that we have coming out, or just because it's cold outside. We think your avatar is going to be a core companion for you on social media and, ultimately when we're in gaming environments. So I'd say that's like kind of the core difference between the two. And then, Smart Wallet was one of the, I don't want to say one of the biggest reasons, but like obviously a driver of our interest in partnering with Coinbase, just because they are going to make it so easy for people to onboard into crypto through this product, and so easy for people that are already here to navigate multiple infrastructures, to navigate multiple ecosystems. We think it's a massive innovation in this space, and we think particularly for the kinds of products that we're building that are meant to go from consumer all the way down into the most active degens, this product is going to have a really material impact on our roadmap.
Awesome. No, great answer. And it's interesting to hear about, just because, to your point, like the point you made earlier, where it's like you could have taken grants, you could have gone a lot of places, you could have, the idea that like you're choosing base because you're thinking years in advance, trying to really think it through and how people are going to onboard, is really thoughtful. I guess last question I would ask is that, do you see this, when you think about this down the line, as sort of a sort of funnel where you're trying to get people in at the sort of inexpensive level of base at a studio account, creating it for free, building something customizable, maybe buying some wearables, and eventually wanting to go in the OG Doodles? Do you see it as different levels of membership? Do you see it as a combination of both? How would you define the way you see the ecosystem and your partnership and the funnel as that exists now? Is it trying to get people to that OG membership, or is it, hey, we just want to participate with as many people as possible in different price points? Some people buy a Model S Tesla, but now they can buy a Model 3 Tesla. Like, what is that? What is the analogy, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, to get people that are non-crypto native to engage with crypto products, they have to have something that they want, and it has to be at a price point that is digestible for them. And the idea of a $4,500 or $6,000 floor Doodles NFT being digestible for somebody that's not crypto native is just delusional. So we need products that are actually set up for mass scale, which, if you really think about what people pay for content online, you're talking like below $10. Like even some of our wearables are like very priced out for most people. But we've never done like first party pack sales or wearable sales, like you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that. So if people can get in an ecosystem for a few bucks, that's going to be a lot more. And even that might be expensive, frankly. For a core user, think like a Netflix subscription is less than $20. Think a Spotify subscription is less than 15. Like, these things are, you have to pay attention to all of these things. So the idea is, how can you create, as a business, how can we create more volume while keeping our costs and the user experience as great as possible? And we believe that is, you can execute that best on a platform like Base and in partnership with a company like Coinbase.
Love that. Well, look, this has been a great discussion. I guess, Julian, anything we didn't ask you today that you're hoping that we got to, or anything we might have potentially missed as far as the news of the day with Base, or anything else y'all wanted to cover that maybe we didn't hit on today?
No. I think I think we covered a lot, and I always appreciate you guys for asking questions that are going to make the audience think a little bit more about like why we do the things that we do. I'm just very excited for this summer. It's going to be a really great moment for the community, a really great moment for the community that has defended the FUD against Doodles for years at this point, and they're really wanting a win. They're really hoping for a win. I think the core community feels like there are wins with very regular cadence, even if misunderstood by the larger Web3 community. But I don't think Doodles is going to be misunderstood for much longer. And we're just excited to have a moment to celebrate with the community all summer. So we thank everybody in the spaces. We thank everybody around the world that is supporting us. Like, we would not be here without our community. And we can't wait to take this next chapter. But thank you guys for giving us a platform.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you very much for stopping by, always, especially when you all have big news, but anytime, truly. You and Austin are some of our faves. And Cap, I guess, Cap, any thoughts on that as we kind of close this thing down? Because once again, I feel like anytime I talk to this, it is impossible for me not to be excited or bullish about Doodles when I am listening to Julian and Austin talk about the direction. It's one of the conversations where I find myself, and even seeing, David Horvath hitting the hundreds in the audience tells you all you need to know. He's got big IP experience. You think about Ugly Dolls, which is an amazing movie, and other things that he's worked on. And Cap, I don't know, I feel like we get to have conversations that remind me of some of the business conversations I would have when I was in the traditional world, but with that Web3 flair. So Cap, curious your thoughts as we kind of finish this sucker
for sure.
out.
Really enjoyed the conversation as always, and shout out to Julian and Austin and everyone for joining us, sharing their time, and everyone who tuned in to listen today. Where it all, I guess, to just briefly sum it up, this talking L2s, talking the consumer experience, talked earlier about consumer products, consumer apps. Said many times, I feel like Coinbase with Base has a very big edge in regards to top of funnel and onboarding new users, just due to their existing embedded customer base, that many of which have not ventured outside of their Coinbase app yet. Base makes that a lot easier to get into this part of the world and interact more on chain, talking about the driving those transactions. It's once I'd love to see some data on, the amount of average transactions from the quote unquote crypto user who's only on an exchange, who's only on a DEX, compared to, a crypto user who is not only self-custodying their assets, but interacting on any layer two. And I'm going to guess that it's quite the split, quite the variance in terms of activity on chain, those in the decentralized world versus those who are just transacting in a centralized exchange. At the end of the day, to keep people here and not just come over for the flavor of the day or the new shiny toy, it's critical that we have great consumer apps and products and IP. And I think that's the one thing that I didn't mention earlier when talking, about, how bullish I am on these L2s and the winners are going to be those that create great content. I guess that's the IP, tie-in, but these L2s that create great content around great products and experiences on chain, and Doodles, the thought of Doodles combined with Base in those quote unquote onboarding efforts, that to me is like a very obvious 1 + 1 = 3. And excited. I'm not surprised, but glad they chose Base. It seems like the perfect partner for a brand like Doodles, as opposed to some of these other, whether the pure gaming or heavy degen change. Like Base just seems like an ideal partnership. And I'll wrap with this, or I'll hand the mic back to you with this, Steve, and we'll probably dive into it a little more tomorrow. But we did get some breaking news on the show. It's Solana related, but it's very similar to something that has been launched on Base, months ago, and that be it Frames and the ability to, interact on chain without leaving Farcaster. An X-like app that's been built on Base. Frames has been live for a while. It's very smooth. It's a front end user interface to where the non-crypto native user really it's a Web 2 interface, allowing them to still mint and transact on chain. Solana just announced they're calling it actually, I don't know what Blinks. They're calling it Blinks, where you'll be able to vote, donate, mint, swap, pay, and others using Solana everywhere. The specific example, though, it would be here on X. So I just like to tie all that together. Man, I think we are there. I think we've reached the era where the tech can be hidden in the background. Does it take a little bit of work? Is it easy to go to launch today? No, you still need partners. There's a little bit of effort, but we've seen it time and time again. And I mentioned, IKB on Blast that I'm still playing, and because it's a great consumer app of something that I enjoy, that happens to be enhanced because it's been built on chain. I think we've reached this era to where, with the effort and the resources, the tech can be hidden, and it's very real and possible to create Web 2-esque experiences, user interfaces, and I think Doodles on Base, it is a match made in heaven in that sense that it's there, it's baked out already, and now you've got two great teams working towards, okay, how can we? What's the next activation look like? He gave us, I don't know if it's the first time I'm hearing the thought of like studio packs make sense. And I think it's something that will make sense to both worlds, right? Like, whether you're the digital asset collector, or you're someone who's had a Doodle experience and you've been introduced to the brand, and you might pick up a pack of digital collectibles for $3 to $5. Like, I think that is the future of NFTs. Will some of those individuals get really deep into the brand and want to own an OG asset on ETH mainnet? Maybe a few. I think as a percentage, going to be very, very small, but that's okay. That's like, I don't think I think this is, in my opinion, the best path forward for these legacy, quote unquote, Web3 brands to move forward while onboarding new people, onboarding the masses, without diluting the value of those OG assets. So well done to Doodles and team. And yeah, I think this is a playbook that we'll see emulated a few times.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it's the right idea. And like, this is, again, what excites me about these conversations, what I continue to like about these conversations, is, the fact that we get to like talk to a real business being built in so many different pieces. Like, we hit on a couple of pieces in the ecosystem. We didn't hit on space, the space miles they have building up, which has already correlated to at least one distribution of, I believe it was NFT Worlds at one point. So just by having your Doodles in space, haven't really didn't get into like OG Doodles and some of the utility that's been going along with those and the events and Project Gray and everything that's happened with that, because they have such a robust ecosystem that, to your point, like, they're not when they're bringing in sort of the normies and people are, getting involved with the studio and buying packs and playing around with that, if they're successful in reaching a core audience, and that core audience, Joey Val's made the point of like, who's your audience? And it goes across the board when he talks about Adventure Time. But the idea of those avatars being things that my kids can play around with, actually own things, potentially make money off those. It's like those things matter to people. And are those people going to be, or my son or daughter going to go out and say, hey, I want to save up to get like $5,000 to get a doodle? Probably not. But they are going to potentially play around in the studio, and maybe one day that's an aspiration. Again, we heard Joey on the stage say, I want to own a doodle. Joey Valls does not own a lot of NFTs. He buys things he likes that he thinks are cute, but like generally speaking, he's not deep in those ecosystems of the NFT world, and yet here he is saying, I want to buy a doodle. I think they're cool. So I think there's something to be said about that funnel not necessarily being a direct funnel where everyone is going to buy like a $5,000 doodle, but maybe it's an aspirational purpose for people if they continue to build out utility, if they continue to have lore, and it continues to be sort of a rookie card collectible for a major brand, which I think is pretty cool. So, Machiavelli, I saw your hand fly up, so I'll let you get in here right before we close down, but then we're going to go ahead and shut this sucker down if you want to jump in one more time.
Thanks, man. I just wanted to say, just to go back to like the Blink stuff, like we're watching this industry form in front of our eyes, and it just kind of infiltrate the Web 2 methodologies and stuff like that. And what a time to be alive and to actually see this industry take form and see what's being built in front of our eyes, and seeing it with great IP like the doodles and everything else coming out of this ecosystem. I couldn't be happier to be a part of it and just to be witnessing this thing of ours.
Yeah, it's awesome to be along for the ride. But I mean, look, the other thing that's out, I don't know if you saw this, Cap, and don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much because kind of a crazy actual day today with some business meetings, some other things that I am working on. But I don't know if you saw NFT stats post that anyone else noticed Blur has been removed from the Blast DApp dashboard, or just me. So something to keep an eye on and see what's going on there. As we, what's going on with Blur and Blast is always curious to me, especially with, again, Blast, the TGE is tomorrow, or at least that's as we understand it. Who knows? Keep following. I didn't get a lot of gold because I didn't play a lot in the ecosystem. Pretty much all my gold came from Colony. But, it's a big day. It's a big day. Could be a great day. Could be a not great day. I suspect that Pac-Man's going to have something to keep everybody in the ecosystem, the vesting schedule, whatever it may be. The real question is, and maybe this is a topic for tomorrow because I don't know if we'll have the info by tomorrow morning, but something to think about tomorrow is there a chance that Pac-Man starts to lose interest in some of the stuff on his platform if he doesn't play this well? It feels like every TGE and every opportunity here is an opportunity for him to bolster his lead or lose his lead. Like, I feel like very volatile moments. So that may be a big discussion tomorrow. It feels like tomorrow is going to be a volatile day, one way or the other, positive or negative for the Blast ecosystem. But all that said, we'll let everyone sail off into their day. Like I said, I got some work to do, some videos to film, some emails to get to, some sponsorships to check on, all the good things. We'll let everyone sail off into their day. We will see everybody bright. We may have a guest. We'll see bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
This episode is brought to you by DGen Network, the only community-based Web3 media network, bringing you the very best content in the NFT and cryptocurrency space. Please visit dgen.network and check out our other great shows. That's DGen, DGEN.network.
Welcome to the future.